Today I got a real prize for you fuckers. I have my full objection prevention course, also known as ethical gaslighting. Now, as you can tell, I'm extremely direct in my communication, so this isn't some 8-hour fluffy ass course, 10-hour course. This is like 3 hours max. And this is mainly for my advanced students, and I really contemplated whether or not I should put this out there, but my business partner said we need to give it to the people, so y'all should thank him. And what we get into is ultimately understanding first how beliefs are formed, what kind of language leads to what kind of objection, the exact strategy, and how to think behind handling and pre-handling every single objection that a person can give you, because it only comes down to a couple buckets. This is the same framework responsible for millions of dollars within myself and also client results like Chris, who went from 3K a month to 30K a month within our first 3 months working together, Alex, who made 10K a month as a setter, Anthony, who also hit 10K a month at 21 years old, or Colton, who went from 4K a month to 9K in our very first month together. It's all after implementing exactly what I'm about to show you here. Now, I do have to say that yes, there's a lot of value in here, and yes, this is what a lot of people have taken to go and make a lot of money, but something that I've consistently gotten from the people who've worked directly with me is my YouTube videos are really helpful, and they take what I say and they go and implement it, and they actually close more deals. But the thing about free content is there is a ceiling, because you don't actually have congruency behind what you're saying. Two people can say the exact same words, the exact same phrases, and it doesn't fully land with one person versus the other because the other person doesn't believe it. The other person does because they are actually living it. And so as you're going through this, I want you to listen to the objections that I'm going to teach you how to pre-handle and think about where they are showing up in your own life, because I'm willing to bet that they are the same exact reason you haven't invested into sales training yourself. I need to think about it. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I'll wait until I'm a closer. The number one thing I'm going to teach you here is taking somebody from a helpless state to a resourceful state. And if you yourself are in a helpless state, it's going to be really hard to take that person to a resourceful state if you yourself are giving those same objections. So yes, you're going to get a lot of value here. You're going to be able to close deals by implementing what I say here, but I have to be clear, this is a fucking YouTube video. You are not going to reach your goals by watching a YouTube video, by regurgitating what someone else says, until you are congruent, until you are living what you are saying. It's really hard to try to give me a timing objection because I don't give myself timing objections, or a money objection. I don't give those to myself. I have Enrique, for example, who joined and instantly started closing more deals. He made his investment back in 10 days.
I've been in Nick's program now for, this is coming on to my 3rd week now. And you go from 6 to 9 in a matter of weeks, and increase my close rate from like 22 and a half to, I believe it was at around 35%. Crazy.
There's only so much we can cover in 10 days. Like, yes, we went through a lot, and yes, he learns very quickly. The biggest thing is that his words finally had congruency. Enrique had been watching my channel for a while. Or Alex joined, and the next day he closed 3 deals after being in a massive slump. Did I give him groundbreaking advice in our first day? Of course not, but he was finally congruent. He can finally see through the objections because he was no longer giving them to himself. So if you're tired of giving yourself these same objections that keep coming up, hit the link down below, apply to see if you qualify to work with me one-on-one. I work with 5 new people a month because of how much I pour into each and every single person. So A, do not get on my calendar if you're a fucking weasel and I have to drag you along and I have to care about your goals more than you. And B, do not come on my calendar if you're looking for a guaranteed placement. I'll show you how to get a role and I'll teach you how to, but I'm not going to hold your hand and guarantee placement. No one can guarantee a job. If anyone says that, you should run. So without further ado, guys, get the notes ready. Make sure you're listening. I would suggest you go through this entire thing twice. Once passively, maybe at the gym or something, and then a second time with notes so you could be able to implement it. There's going to be a lot of information here. So again, without further ado, let's jump in. What up? If you are here, it's because you are at the point where you know how to find problems and you understand that one of the most important parts of your sales call is understanding the sale that needs to be made and unpacking those problems and getting depth. And then the next piece is challenging the prospect and understanding that where they are because of them. And so that's exactly what we're going to dive into here. This is going to be a pretty in-depth training, so buckle the fuck up. We're going to talk a lot of in-depth things about how people make decisions and where it actually comes from. And a lot of this is going to relate to how you challenge them and knowing where to challenge them. So we're going to dive deep. So, like I said, we're going to talk about decision making and ultimately being able to shift beliefs. And so what you're going to understand when you're done here is that experiences form beliefs, beliefs form identities, form decision-making processes. And if we don't handle the decision-making process or shift it, then that is what's going to fuck the sale and ultimately not let this person get to the outcomes that they want, right? So there's a fundamental believing you have to have, and I've said this multiple times at this point, but I have to keep drilling it because it's important for you to internalize this. Every single outcome in our lives is a direct reflection of the decisions that we have made up until this point. You included, me included, prospects included. And sales only exists because humans suck at making decisions. It's the only reason we have a job. It's because people suck at making decisions. And every prospect has who gets on a call with you, there's one thing that they have already proven, that their current way of making decisions hasn't produced the outcome that they want in the domain that you sell. So I'll give you a couple examples of this, right? If you sell fitness, you have to believe in your soul, because it is true, that their decision-making process around food, around consistency, around effort have produced stagnation or just no results at all, right? If you sell lead gen, their decision-making process around risk, around timing, around marketing has produced inconsistency or whatever the problem is, right? If you sell career coaching, their decision making process around security, worth, being ready has produced stagnation in their career. And so, before we continue going with this fundamental belief, you now see why someone needing to go and think about it makes absolutely no sense, because they're thinking about it from the perspective that has gotten them here in front of you, and it is a flawed perspective, right? You get the point. If their decision making process worked, they would not be on the call. And so I cannot stress this enough, how important it is for you to believe this, both for yourself in your own life and for the context of the prospect. Something that I also say often is the person who joins the call is not going to be the person who buys, right? We need to shift their beliefs and identity to act in accordance with the person that they want to be, who has achieved what they want to do, right? And remember that their identity is formed from their beliefs, which is formed from their experiences, which is what forms their decision-making process, which we're going to dig deeper into in a second here. But the person who joins the call, not the person who buys. Now, the thing about decisions is they're rooted in beliefs. So in order to get a different decision, we need it to be made from a different belief system, which ultimately forms a different identity, an identity that serves them, the one that we want them to make the decision through. So let's talk about beliefs, right? What the fuck even is a belief in the first place? What's a limiting belief? What even is all this, right? You have to understand the definition so that you can be able to understand the mechanism. Otherwise, you're just throwing things at them. And so the reason objections repeat themselves is because they stem from what we call a belief loop. And it's your job to be able to catch that belief loop and make sure that their way of thinking doesn't get in the way of their desired or future outcomes. So what's a belief? Very simple. A belief is an internal rule that the brain uses to decide what is safe, possible, and worth doing. And it's based on past experiences, emotional conditioning, and repeated interpretation. So this is all a smart way of saying that beliefs are ultimately filters. They're not thoughts, they're autopilot. They determine what someone accepts or rejects. They determine what feels risky or reasonable, right? They determine what actions feel justified versus irresponsible. It all comes down to their beliefs, which all come from their emotional conditioning and their experiences. And so the best way to think about it is a belief is our brains want to conserve as much energy as possible. And so the belief acts as the filter or the shortcut to make decisions without having to exert all this energy and reevaluate reality all the time. It's the reality filter. Motherfuckers live on autopilot. And again, this is important to understand even for yourself, right? Because you may have a belief, which is why this training is so important. You may have a belief that the reason you're not closing deals is because you don't have the right word tracks, right? Because you don't have the right, I don't know, like something as black and white as like your tonality, and that's the only thing. But it's because you don't have a fundamental understanding of how decisions work. And so because of this belief that you probably have of I don't have the right word tracks, you are now trying to solve it from the decision-making process of let me get the right word track so that when they say this, I say this. But you're smarter than that now. And so when a belief isn't serving their outcomes well, it's called a limiting belief, right? It's limiting from getting to where they want to get to be. This is fucking dangerous if it's not addressed. This is dangerous. When a prospect objects, they are not objecting logic. The obvious fucking decision is to move forward. They're protecting this filter or this belief that keeps their nervous system regulated. And so it's a pattern and it just feels obvious, which is why, like I said up here, it's fucking dangerous, right? Beliefs form identities and decisions are made through the lens of their identity. So in order to break through to the control room of the brain, you have to be able to influence them at the identity level, which is what we talked about here. Because if you can shift this, right, then you can influence this and this, right? Shift their beliefs, have them see themselves in a different identity, influence their decision-making process, right? I hope you're following. You might have to pause, take notes. You're going to have access to this SOP as well. So, what are identities, right? We know that experiences form beliefs. We know that beliefs form identities. What are identities, though? And so, identities, so we're going to talk about how beliefs and clusters of beliefs form identities and how identities form decision-making processes, right? So an identity, very simple again, it's a belief or a cluster of beliefs, which we just talked about above, that has repeated and emotionally reinforced to the brain and treats it as who I am. So the identity is who they see themselves as. Simply put, an identity is how a person sees themselves. And like I said, they operate on fucking autopilot and they make decisions through their identity, which is reinforced from their belief. So once a belief becomes an identity, it stops feeling optional. It feels morally correct to defend. Threats to it feel like threats to themselves because it's who they see themselves as, right? So if someone believes that a smart way to make decisions is to think about it and you're challenging that, well, then they are going to take it as you are challenging their intelligence, right? So that's why people are going to protect bad habits, right? We call that rationalizing. That's why people are going to defend outcomes that they hate, also a form of rationalizing. That's why people are going to sabotage opportunities that contradict who they see themselves as. I'll take you as a salesperson, for example. Me telling you that it's not as simple as just word tracks to word vomit out to be able to get this person to make a different decision is most likely attacking, not intentionally, but attacking how you see yourself because you see yourself as a smart person who was ultimately looking for word tracks to solve their sales problem. And so me saying that and you internalizing it means that you have to believe that the thing that you have thought isn't true, right? And it's not because they're stupid. Same with you. It's not because you're stupid. It's because the brain prioritizes identity consistency over outcome improvement. So it becomes a self-sabotaging loop, but we can use this to our advantage, guys, right? I'll say it again, identity consistency over outcome improvement. We just have to see them, have them see themselves in a different identity that they can now be consistent in, an identity that they sell themselves on. You understand? So now, how limiting beliefs form identities, right? This is where shit starts to get fun. A limiting belief is very simple. It's something that we believe to be true that's not, right? Which could lead to fear, which is rational or irrational. So let me give you some examples of how this ties together. So let's take fitness. So the experience is an unfit person works out for a week, they don't see progress. The first limiting belief that's formed is that losing weight is unrealistic. The second limiting belief that's formed is my genetics won't allow me to lose weight. So what is the identity formed from these two things? I am meant to be a big person. Because they worked out for a week, didn't see progress, it's unrealistic because of their genetics, and they're meant to be a big person. So this is who they're seeing themselves as. So what decision do they make as a result of the identity? To stop working out. What result do they get? They fucking stay fat. What does this reinforce? See, I was right. I am meant to be fat. And it all stemmed from these two limiting beliefs here, which formed their identity, which led to their decision. Because the belief here is that they can't lose weight or they have bad genetics. And the real problem was effort, time horizon, and commitment. We're cooking up right now. Effort is something they can control, genetics is not. And so it's tough to be able to look in the mirror and say that the reason you're a fat fuck is because of something that you can control, not because of something that you can't, because then they have to look in the mirror and know that they haven't done enough. And there's a way to tactically get them to see that without being defensive. or at least minimizing the amount of defensiveness. Remember what I said at the beginning. They are here because they have a flawed decision-making process. So now imagine you get this fucker on your call, and then this dude says that he wants to go think about if he's going to join your weight loss program or not. When this is his fucking decision loop. Do you see how that's going to keep him stuck? Do you see why this is why he's on the sales call? Now, this is a little more obvious example just so you can see the point, but let's look at another one. Let's look at a biz op. The experience, someone attempts to start a business while working full time, and work gets busy and they don't prioritize the business. So they form the belief, I don't have time to make the decision. I don't have time to make it work. They also form the belief, there's probably a bunch, right? You could brainstorm them. They also form the belief that I need to have more time so that I could do this. So the decision is they either half-ass the business or they put it all to the side together, right? This is, they do one of these two things, minimal effort, or they just don't fucking do it at all. Either way, they don't see the success. What does that reinforce? See, this didn't work because I don't have time. What identity do they have? I'm not someone who can build a business unless I have a bunch of readily available time at my disposal. This is the identity that they have formed, right? Which is what led to this decision, which is what reinforced this decision. But what did it all stem from, guys? It all stemmed from these two beliefs that did not serve them. I didn't have time to make it work. I need more time so I can be able to do this. Do you see what's happening here? The business didn't fail because of time. It failed because they thought shit was sweet and expected low discomfort progress. They treated busy as a stop signal instead of a constraint to solve. And this way of thinking isn't going to serve them well in business, even if they do fucking move forward. Let's say they tell you, oh, well, things are less busy now, so I'm ready to give this a shot again. They're still not going to see success. We haven't handled the actual fucking thing, right? They're waiting for ideal conditions before committing, but it's backwards. You commit and you create the ideal conditions. And so, again, all of which makes no fucking sense, but this is what their identity is rooted in, which ultimately where their decision making process is going to come from. The belief of I need more time becomes an excuse that justifies never changing priority structure. We're going to talk deeper about time and stuff, but the point of this training is for you to understand belief systems and decision making systems and how they're formed. So now what I want you to do, my friends, is you all should have access to this, is understanding limiting beliefs, but with your prospects, right? Understanding them at a fucking deep level. What do they say? Right? The exact framework that we follow down here, right? What do they say? What is the limiting belief behind that? What's the root issue and what's the truth that they need to acknowledge? And inside of the course, you will have access to this, and the document will be linked with an example, right? A career coaching example. Fill out as many of these as you can. You could keep going and keep adding cells, as many of these as you can think of. What did they say? What's the belief behind that? What's the root issue? And what's the truth that they need to acknowledge? This is how you're going to get dialed. This is the boring work that gets you paid. So before moving on, knock this out. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Welcome back. So what we're talking about in this one is ultimately, so by now you understand the what behind the why, which is really important. So you're not going and regurgitating a bunch of word tracks without knowing what you're doing, right? Without knowing what's behind it. And so right now you understand the fundamentals of how a belief is formed and how ultimately an identity is formed, which ultimately leads to the lens in which they're making decisions, right? Otherwise known as a decision-making process, which will fuck the sale if not handled. And so the thing is, right, like I just said, if the belief stays the same, then the identity stays the same, right? And you see how the pattern goes: belief, identity, decision. Belief stays the same, identity stays the same, which fucks their decision-making process, right? And so we're going to talk about how to interrupt this pattern, how to interrupt this flow here, and shift their belief and have influence over their decision-making process to empower them to a decision-making process that actually serves their ideal outcomes well. So we're going to dive pretty fucking deep here, okay? So keep going. We're going to first, you need to understand like what even is a limiting belief. And a limiting belief is a belief that is not serving their ideal outcome, right? It's limiting them. And again, this is what's going to fuck the sale, and ultimately fuck the sale. This is what's going to keep them stuck. This is what's going to keep them in this loop, in this pattern continuously with nothing changing. Now, the thing about limiting beliefs and why they are so dangerous is they don't feel negative at all, right? Remember, these people live in patterns, right? This is their filter in which they see the world. So they don't, and an identity is how they see themselves. So it feels like a responsible, reasonable, and cautious thing to do. They've ultimately gaslit themselves to the point of this thing that's keeping them stuck, telling themselves that it's actually keeping them safe, right? It's actually them being responsible. It's actually them being reasonable. And their defense mechanisms to protect the identity. And so when we look at fear, fear is rooted in a limiting belief, right? And so it can't be overcome by logic because it's not created in the logical part of the brain. It has to be overcome with emotion. So, how do we manufacture emotion? Analogies, stories, identity anchors, all of which that allow someone to take action despite their fear to achieve their result. But this is because we're detaching the belief from the person, right? They are like, okay, I have this belief that's not serving me. And so they're detaching from it into a belief that is actually serving them. So, in order for that to make sense, well, you have to know, well, what do they need to believe, right? And so, what they need, first of all, when we talk about their state, we need to get them into what we call a resourceful state. Right now, the person in front of you, like I always say, the person in front of you, the person who joins the call, is not going to be the person who buys. And so, the person in front of you has allowed helplessness and external factors be the reason why they haven't gotten to where they want to be. And so they need to shift that belief and focus on the internal factors that they can control. That way, they're taking ownership over their lives. So, we're going to walk through a ton of limitations and beliefs on how successful versus unsuccessful people view each limitation here. And what we're doing is we're shifting them from A to B. Now, I always say that sales is a mirror. So, as we're going through this, you'll realize that maybe you have some of these limitations. Maybe you have some of these beliefs. And until you can shift it within yourself, until you can stop giving yourself these same excuses, it's going to be really hard to give the person in front of you. It's going to be hard to transfer that with conviction to the person in front of you. So let's dive in. So let's look at the first one, right? Procrastination. How do unsuccessful people view this, right? They wait for certainty before acting. They use research as a reason to delay risk, right? They use research as a means to delay commitment. They need to feel ready before moving forward. And the identity is I'm cautious and thorough. So these are the beliefs that form this identity here, right? How does a successful person view this? They use action to create clarity, right? They move before feeling ready. They take action, they get information from that action. Through that, they reiterate, they keep going, right? They don't need a bunch of certainty and a bunch of information before taking a step. They are okay with imperfect action and they adjust as they go. They treat research as something that they need to do, apply immediately, get information, and then reiterate. Okay. This is how your prospects think, and maybe even you. And so this is how they need to think, right? Let's move on. Money. How do unsuccessful people view money? They view it, what's their relationship with money, I should say, right? As a means to stay safe and avoid risk, whereas successful people view money as speed, leverage to their outcomes, right? Unsuccessful, broke motherfuckers, they wait for conditions before acting. Whereas successful people invest into change for their future conditions. They don't let life happen to them. They grab life by the fucking balls and they make it happen to them damn selves, right? Unsuccessful people lets lack of money become a stop sign. Again, you're probably listening to this, and there's probably areas in your life that you know you need to invest into to get better outcomes, but you're telling yourself the story of I don't have money. Now, it's going to be really hard to help someone else if you're telling yourself the same thing. Whereas successful people, they get resourceful when money is tight. They view money as a problem that they need to solve, as opposed to a limitation to keep them stuck. Now, the identity here is I am just being responsible. This is fucking dangerous because that sounds reasonable. It sounds cautious, right? I'm just being responsible. But the identity of a successful person is I will find a way. When I was broke as fuck, right? Making $3 grand a month, and I needed to invest into training, It was $16,000 that I did not have. So what did I do? I took on a loan. I got resourceful, right? I found a way. I could have looked at it and said, well, I don't have the money, so I just can't do it. This is how unsuccessful people think. And the tough part is that they need to make decisions like they're here, right? They need to make decisions like the person that they want to be. Let's keep going. Time, right? Broke motherfuckers, they let busyness dictate their priorities, whereas successful people reallocate time forward to create leverage. They're in control, right? Broke people wait for life to slow down. Successful people grab life by the balls, like I said, and make time for what changes their future, because they know that they mold their world does not mold them, right? And again, you're probably listening to this and you have some of these limiting beliefs. It's all good though, right? That's why we're here, so we can shift them with you to help shift them with them, right? Treats time as pressure and as a reason to delay. Successful people treat time pressure as something to solve. Same with money. It's a problem to solve, right? I'm just busy is the identity that's formed from this cluster of beliefs, which is a reasonable thing to believe, right? In their brain, versus I decide what matters. I control life, right? That's how successful people think. All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about ego. Broke motherfuckers try to solve and do everything alone to protect their identity. Successful people use help, frameworks, and coaching to compress time, right? They know that what they need, the knowledge and the information that they need, there's someone who's further ahead of them that has it. And so they get it from that person, right? Or from that source. And they're not hard-headed and thinking, I have to figure this out by myself. Right? Like Jeremy Haynes' program is like 10 grand a month, and you have to make a minimum 100 grand a month to even be accepted into there. Right? These are the kinds of people that he's working with, though. You see? Sees support as weakness, whereas successful people, they see support as leverage. And what's the identity from this cluster of beliefs? I'm independent. Right? This is their ego speaking, versus I optimize with help. Right? And then the last one, when it comes to knowledge, right? Broke motherfuckers wait until the perfect step appears, whereas successful people choose a direction and adjust as they go. Broke motherfuckers freeze because of uncertainty. Successful people act even when unsure, even when they're shooting into the void. It's similar to procrastination above, right? Use confusion as a stop sign. They use momentum to create clarity. Successful people, right? Broke people use not knowing where to find help as an excuse, whereas successful people are proactive in finding the help that they need. At the identity as well, I'm just unsure. That's this cluster of beliefs. That's how it forms this identity. Whereas this cluster of beliefs forms the identity of I learn by moving. And remember, people make decisions through their identity. That's the lens in which they make decisions through. So now that you understand what a limiting belief, first of all, you understand how a belief is formed, you understand what a limiting belief is, and you understand what beliefs they have versus what they need to get, the question becomes, okay, well, how do I take them from point A to point B? Because you're not just going to tell them, hey, you need to think this way, right? How do we plant this idea into their mind and ultimately shift their belief and influence their identity to influence their decision-making process? First, you have to identify the limiting belief. And you do this by asking, what have they done to solve their problem? And they're going to give you an answer along the lines of what's above here, right? They're going to give you an answer along the lines of like, yeah, I didn't really know where to start. Yeah, I didn't really, I didn't have the money. Okay. Then you're going to gather context. Context is key. You're going to gather context. This is going to expose the story they've been telling themselves and their justification for inaction. Then we're going to interrupt the pattern. This is where you're dropping their guard because you know you're about to cook them. So it's something along the lines of, are you open to seeing it from a different perspective? Okay, well, like, what if it wasn't exactly what you think? Would you be open to seeing things that way? Right? Remember, we're slowly getting them to a resourceful state, and we're opening up their mind and detaching this identity. Okay, so then we're going to plant the idea that it's not serving them with an analogy or a story or even an identity anchor, right? And so this is now the first step or the second step to planting into their mind that this way of thinking, this way of making decisions is not serving them. After you do that, you're going to ask them to justify the idea. In order for it to be received, it has to come from their mouth. They have to own this. And then you're going to ask them, what has that way of thinking costed them so far? Right? They're digging themselves deeper into this frame. So by now you've planted the idea, they've accepted that it's not serving them. And then now they're digging deeper by telling you this idea that I have that is not, this belief I have that is not serving me, this is what it's costed me. How much longer do you want it to continue costing you that? It's like the shit that we learned in science class. I forget what the fuck it's called. But when the two cells start to like pull apart, right? That's what we're doing with their belief. Okay. And then asking them if they're ready to overcome it. This is one of the last steps to detaching them, because they're owning that it hasn't served them and that they need to let it go. And then why now to let it go? A lot of you do why now wrong. You say why now to start this business? Why now to buy this program? That's not the real why now. It's why now to let go of this belief that is not serving you. Then permission to keep them accountable, right? I use a lot of we, right? If this way, part of you and that this isn't serving you, or we know that this belief isn't serving us, right? Or it's not serving you, but there's a part of you that's been making decisions this way for a long time, right? If that way of thinking were to show itself, would we as your coaches have your permission to keeping you accountable to overcome that? In other words, if that belief were to try to jump in the driver's seat when it's time to make a decision at the end of the call, do I have your permission to fucking slap you? Do I have your permission to keep you accountable, to objection handle you? But you see, if you do this, takes 10 minutes, right? If you do this in the call, even either you're gonna get less objections, or if they do have an objection, you're gonna be able to fly past the objection, because it's you and them versus the version of themselves that they are trying to get away from, that they have accepted isn't serving them. And you have a lot of context around what it's costed them, right? So now we're going to dive into each and every one of the ones that I just said above, of procrastination, money, time, ego, and knowledge. And I'm going to give an example of a live call for every single one. Let's keep going. So by now, you understand fundamentally, because not much else is going to matter unless you understand the fundamentals of this shit, of where a decision-making process comes from, right? And so you understand that experiences form beliefs, form identities. Identities are what shape their decision-making process. This is what fucks the sale if it's not handled properly, right? And so we also talked about limiting beliefs, which can create fear. And ultimately, a limiting belief is a belief that is not serving their ideal outcomes, right? It's limiting them from getting to where they want to be. I won't go through this entire thing in depth again, but we talked about the 10 steps to being able to shift a limiting belief. And so now we're going to talk about the most common limiting beliefs. And so we're going to start with procrastination. This one is dangerous. They're all dangerous, but this one is specifically dangerous because it's avoidance disguised as progress. So how this is going to show itself is they're going to say things like, oh, I've just been doing research. Oh, I didn't know where to start, right? Again, avoidance disguised as progress, doing research, right? And what's actually happening is they're avoiding committing, right? They're not lacking information. The research that they're doing is creating the feeling of progress without the risk of action. They feel good, right? Going in and looking at a bunch of different gyms, or say you're fucking fat and you're looking at a bunch of different workouts. It feels like you're making progress towards losing weight because you're researching, but they're not. And so the flawed belief here is I'm just going to gather enough information until I feel ready. Now, why does this kill decisions? Readiness doesn't come from thinking, it comes from doing. These are the same people when you ask them in the discovery, and what have you been doing? And then at the end of the call, these are the same people who say, oh, I need to do more research, or I'm going to think about it, right? They are stuck in a loop of discomfort to the delay, and then they justify it, and their identity is rooted in being a cautious person. So what's the reframe that you're creating? The reframe and the belief that they need to adapt, right, is that research is not progress without execution. Confusion is not the problem, avoidance is. So let's look at this in real time, in action. So first, number one, you need to identify. So how you're going to identify is always, what steps would you say you've taken towards solving XYZ problem so you can overcome XYZ emotional problem? Now, this is key, which I said earlier, is none of this is going to land if you don't have a concrete problem, if you don't get deep enough in problems. That's why this is saved for this part of the course, because the very beginning is understanding how to get deep, because that's what is going to give you a leg to stand on right here, right? So what steps would you say you've taken? And then they're going to say something along the lines of, I've just been doing research. You're going to gather context first, right? So what's prevented you from taking action? Oh, I wanted to gather as much information as possible. Boom. Now we're going to interrupt their pattern. Remember, all the way up here, right? We're interrupting this pattern between here, right? And so that's exactly what we're going to do right here. We're going to interrupt their pattern and this belief. Can I offer a perspective, right? Or are you open to looking at things a different way? That's another way to do it. What if things weren't exactly the way you thought? Would you be open to seeing it that way, right? But you ultimately want to interrupt the pattern, and this is going to put their guard down, which is going to give you leeway to be able to jump in there and hijack the perspective. Yes, Mr. Salesman, I am. Then what you're going to do is you're going to plant the idea into their brain using a fitness analogy. So you're going to say, so let's take an overweight person who's 300 pounds, right? They know they need to lose weight. So they go and do a bunch of research on the best diets, the best workouts, but they don't actually implement them. Do you see how they are stuck in analysis paralysis, but nothing has actually changed, even though they've gathered all this information, they've done all this research? Yes. Now they just own the fact that the analogy makes sense. And some you may need to re-explain to them, because really there should be no other answer but yes. I can see that. Cool. So when we look at your situation, do you see the fact that we've had XYZ problems for XYZ time frame? The fact that you haven't been able to spend time with your kids for the last 5 years, the fact that you haven't been making the amount of money that you want to make for the last 10 years, whatever. This is why context is so important. That's why it's the first part we talk about in this program before any of this shit can land, right? Do you see, when we look at your situation, do you see the fact that we've had XYZ problems for XYZ time frame, but only done research? Is it fair to say that there's been some analysis paralysis? Yes. How so, in your opinion, right? Now you've planted the idea. Now they're going to justify it. Well, because I've only been doing research. Now, keep in mind, there's a good chance they're going to try to push back on you here. That's okay. It may not be as easy as just them accepting it. And I have a couple examples to show you where it was not that easy with them just accepting it, right? I wish I could tell you it is, that they would just accept it every time. Now, when they do, a fucking piece of cake, but they won't always. So there's a good chance they're going to try to push back, because remember, we're shifting beliefs that form their identity, and their identity is what keeps them safe. It's their filter, right? So they're going to try to defend the belief. But now that you have the fundamental understanding of what this belief is and why it doesn't serve them, you're going to be able to stay in the ring with them. So let's assume they say yes, right? Because I've only been researching, I haven't actually done anything. Like, that way of thinking, what has it costed you so far? Well, it's costed me time with family. It's costed me this. It's costed me that. How much longer do you want it to cost you that, right? They're going to say, well, I don't want it to cost me that much longer. Right? You're setting the question up to get very specific responses here. Now, I always say this, the difference between manipulation and persuasion is intentions. We are doing this to help them. We're not doing this to hurt them. It's fucking important to know, right? We're not doing this to hurt them. So then, how much longer do you want it to cost you that? Well, I don't want it to cost me that much longer, right? Now what's happened here? We've planted the idea that this way of thinking isn't serving them. They've justified that it's not serving them. They've admitted to what it's costing them. They've said they don't want it to cost them that much longer. Are you ready to overcome that way of thinking? Yes. Now, like I said above, we are shifting a belief that has been in the driver's seat and has formed their identity. So they may use loose language here. It's important to pick up on it. They may say shit like, I think, or I hope, and you don't want to let that slide. This is because they're still holding on to the identity, and we haven't successfully shifted it, right? Don't let that go past your head. So if they say things like, I hope so, or I think so, you're going to say, and you want to pause the way I'm pausing, right? It may sound like I'm being nitpicky here, but when we think about spending more time with your family, when we think about being able to travel, when we think about all the shit that's important to them, when we think about outcomes, right, the problems we're solving and what's required to get there, and then say, I think or I hope I'm ready, do you think that kind of language serves those outcomes well? No, it doesn't. What do you think you can say instead? I am ready. And you're just going to stay in the ring here until they make the decision that they are ready to overcome that way of thinking. It's a decision. So after they do, you can ask them, well, why now? Right? After X amount of time, after years, after 3 years, 4 years, why now? What's actually different this time around? Then we're going to ask for permission to keep them accountable. In other words, objection handle. Okay, and if that way of thinking were to show itself, would we as your coaches have your permission to keeping you accountable and empowering you to overcome that? Yes. You sure? Because I'm not always this nice, right? This is a lighthearted way of telling them that you are going to whoop that ass if objections come up at the end. This is also where we transition into the heaven/solution stage, and we could bring the energy back up. It's like I said earlier, your sales call is an emotional roller coaster, right? We're down. And so now we're going to dive into a couple examples of what this looks like on a real call and following these 10 steps. Let's dive in.
Flooding our market. So yeah, I've been thinking about this for some time.
Okay, so about 2 years. And in that 2 years, what steps would you say you've taken towards maybe pivoting into something that can give you more consistency? Like, what would you say you've done? First step, identify, right? What steps would you say you've done or you've taken towards solving XYZ logical problem so you can overcome XYZ emotional problem, right?
Done a lot of research in different areas. I've thought about buying an existing brick and mortar business.
What did we just get? The limiting belief of I've done research. Let's keep going.
I'm so a work from home person. I can't stand the idea of getting up and going anywhere. I mean, I'm just too spoiled from being able to do my own work from home on my own schedule. So yeah, I've done a lot of research and I know I either want to invest in something, buy a business, start some kind of income stream. I don't know. So that's kind of why I'm here with you today, to just see like if this could be a viable thing for me.
Okay. So don't let that go over your head, right? She says all this shit that she's been doing research on. She also says, that's why I'm here to see if this is viable. So she thinks that being on this call is progress. So buying a business is one thing. What else have you researched on? Let's gather more context.
I don't know. I mean, I've been in this space for so long. I'm familiar with a lot of different avenues of just ways to make income, and I've explored some different ones. I don't know. Where I'm at right now is just the video space, and I know I don't want to be on video, but just the potential with it, you know. So I've done a little bit of research in that. But yeah, other than, you know, I'm just reading a lot of books, looking at a lot of different things, trying to keep my mind open to all the different possibilities before I land on something. Reading
a lot of books, trying to keep my mind open until I land on something. Mind you guys, it's been 2 years that she's been doing this. Okay. And like, again, this is why I like talking to other entrepreneurs, because we can get very caught up in like research mode, right? We can get caught up in ideas, right? And so this is coming from a good place, right? But 2 years is a decent amount of time to be researching and reading and keeping your mind open without acting, right? And so again, coming from a good place, like what do you think has prevented you from actually taking action on one of them? So what I did there was a little sneaky, right? So I put a little bit of an identity frame on her, and I said, you know, as an entrepreneur, it's easy to get into this like research mode, which I'm ultimately planting the idea that she's been in that research mode. Now I'm gathering even more context, which is step number 2 of what's prevented you from taking action. We're going to expose more information about this limiting belief.
Wanting to know I have the right one to take action on.
Boom. Got it. Wanting to know I have the right one before taking action. Now we're about to cook.
Because I've spent so many years in the space that I'm in, I don't want to build something else again that isn't going to scale or grow. So
I've spent so much, like, listen to what she's saying. I've spent so much time doing what I'm doing. I don't want to build something else that's not going to scale and grow. Like, this is very, very clear, and she's putting it on a silver platter. A lot of y'all would have missed this. Not anymore.
So I need to know whatever I do choose this last time or this time is going to be something somewhat successful and viable, because I don't want to put a lot of time and effort into something and it not grow. So I guess my research and all that has been what's a good fit for me, what's a good fit for what I want to pour my time into, and then what's gonna, what's gonna come back to me and all that. So I don't know if I look at it as a negative. Like 2 years wasn't a full time job of me.
What is she doing? She's rationalizing and defending it, right? Exactly like I said, like this is the belief that has formed her identity of being a cautious person. She identifies as someone who's smart because she hasn't taken action, right? She's protecting that identity. Like she's telling me, I don't believe it to be a negative thing. I'm not a bad person, I'm not stupid. And you're not a bad person, you're not stupid, but the belief isn't serving you, Miss Prospect.
Researching, but definitely wanting to be solid on something. I'm not somebody who's going to jump into something, give it a try, do a lot of things, and then go, oh, that's not for me. I want to know that, okay.
Identity, like now that we just went through this entire thing, you can hear it in her language. I'm not the type of person. What is that? Her identity. I'm not the type of person who just jumps in. I'm cautious, I'm careful, right?
Okay, I'm committed to this, and this is what I'm doing now.
Okay. Okay. Is it okay if I offer a perspective? Pattern interrupt. Now we're about to hijack this perspective. We're about to shift her belief and ultimately shift her identity and ultimately shift her decision making process. Because if not, if I just keep going here, what is she going to tell me at the end of the call? Oh, I just need to do more research and see if this business model is viable. Oh, I need to think on it. She's a cautious person. That's how she's perceiving herself based on the actions that she's done. This is what we need to change, right? Let's keep going.
100%.
Yeah. So when you say like the right thing, right? Like I'll put it this way. This is gonna sound like a super left field example. Just bear with
Sure.
me, right? Let's say you're super. Now we're planting the idea using the overweight analogy. Overweight. You know you need to lose weight, and so you go through this rabbit hole of doing a bunch of research, right? The best diets, the best workout routines, the best cardio to follow. And on paper, you have the perfect workout routine that it's taken you some time to develop,
Yeah.
but then you still look the same, right? So, like when we look at your situation and seeing that we've been researching and trying to find the perfect vehicle, is it fair to say maybe there's been a little bit of paralysis analysis there?
100%. Yeah. I feel like in the
Boom, she agreed. Perfect.
business that I'm in, it didn't grow, it didn't scale. And so I'm
Right.
fearful of that next thing doing the same thing and kind of like tanking or the failure. Sure.
Okay.
I
And
mean,
I
if I'm
respect
being
that.
honest, that's
I,
100% honest. Yeah.
I respect that. I respect you for that. So, is it like a little bit of you want to reward her for her honesty so she can continue being honest, right? You want to give her a cookie there. You want to give her an award, a reward. I mean, you're a failure.
Sure, sure. I set out with the idea that this business was going to do something differently, and it didn't do that. So yeah, and like I
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I've done a few different businesses, and not all of them have been successes. So yeah, you do get to a point sometimes where you get, a little jaded, a little nervous, and should I do that or not?
I really genuinely respect this woman because she's being so honest and she's not running away from what's actually going on. But a couple minutes ago, she was. A couple minutes ago, she didn't see it as a negative. She thought that this is her being cautious. Now, as we're unpacking it even deeper, she doesn't want to fail again, right? And so, this is her means of protecting herself. Let's keep going.
Because it's embarrassing sometimes to be the
I
person who keeps
I
trying
understand.
and keeps failing.
I understand. I totally get that. I want to say something here that's going to be pretty direct, and I
Okay.
promise I don't mean to offend you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I'm pattern interrupting again here because I'm about to hit her with a hard reality, a hard truth. A lot of times we confuse comfort and fear, right?
Sure.
It's not exactly a fear of failure, right? Because it's been 2 years of research. In fact, what it actually is from the heart here is comfort with failure,
Sure.
right? So keep saying that this is her identity and her identity is how she sees herself. So you have to tread lightly here because you don't want her to get defensive. So that's why I install what's called help frames and saying that I'm saying this in her best interest. But what she needs to see is the very thing that she's afraid of, which is failure, is the exact same thing that she's living in right now. Failure. Failure is not doing anything. Failure is continuing to stay in the same place. That's exactly where she is. Because we've been in this place where nothing has changed. We've been researching, we've been thinking. And because we don't want the next thing to fail, we haven't done anything.
Sure.
And so, do you see how staying in the same place is, in fact, even more of a failure than trying something, it not working, and moving on?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. And so, like, and this is human, right? But this fear of failure, this way of thinking of I don't want to take a stab at something until I 100% know it's going to work. Do you think that way of thinking is serving you the best, or should we maybe start to let go of that?
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, it's not the best way to approach it. Yeah.
So we're detaching her, this identity that's not serving her, from the identity that is serving her, right? We're detaching these beliefs here. And so that's where this is coming from. Like, is this worth holding on to, or should we let go of it? And she's owning it, which is good. And again, a lot of people would run away from that, right? And so the fact that you're not, you're smart for that. And it says a lot about you. Reward her for being truthful and honest. That fear of failure, I'm not saying it'll happen tomorrow or the next day, but that's the catalyst to change. Like, are you ready to overcome that way of thinking, taking a stab at something, even if it's not here, even if it's not perfect, even if you're not 100% comfortable? Like, are you ready to overcome that fear of that fear of failure and that way of thinking? So the one part I realized I didn't do here is asking her to justify that, right? But she kind of did earlier. So now it's, are you ready to overcome that way of thinking, right? And this is digging even deeper, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, why now?
I don't know. I think I just like I wrapped up a bunch of work projects. You know, our back to school season is in full swing. I had a lot of sponsored work I did. I wrapped that up, and I'm just now at a point where I have time, and I guess that's kind of why it's now. And I
This is a bullshit answer. Not only for the sake of the sale, but for the sake of her own success. She thinks that the reason that she's ready to overcome this way of thinking is because externally time just opened up. Again, a lot of you would let this go over your head. A lot of you would let this slide. And she's saying the right things, but then somehow at the end of the call, she still doesn't move forward. This type of language is why. Look at where we go from here.
don't want to go out and pitch myself for more
Mm-hmm.
homeschool related work. I figure if I'm gonna hustle anything, I'd rather start the new thing now.
Good, good. Let's dig a layer deeper though, right? Because
Okay.
again, like over the last few years, I'm sure there's been spurts of moments where we have time and then things get filled up, right? But the main thing here that we're identifying is fear of failure and like overcoming and letting go of that fear of failure that's been in the driver's seat. And so when it comes to letting go of that, like what do you think is different now that you're ready to have the internal conversation and not letting that way of thinking control you? Like what's different there? It's not why now to like start a business. It's why now to let go of this limiting belief. Why now to detach yourself from the belief and the identity that's not serving you? Why now?
The only different thing that I feel right now is just a vibe in the sense that I do want to change, like I said, just kind of the niche, the area, the space that I'm in. I feel like I've just kind of outgrown where I'm at in that
Mm,
and I'm ready
mm,
I am ready to try something new.
yeah.
So yeah, I do feel I'm to that level, just of my current situation that I'm like, I want to transfer myself into something different.
Good,
So
good.
yeah,
And
I
you
do
sound like
feel
you mean
that.
that. You sound like you mean that. So it's in hindsight, I maybe still would have gone a little bit deeper, right? But the thing that allowed me to take this answer is she said, I'm ready to outgrow. I'm ready to move on, right? And so I'm going to reinforce this I'm ready to go, I'm ready to move on by rewarding her again, identity framing her again, and saying, it sounds like you mean that. I can hear it, right?
Yeah.
Because again, we're having a tough conversation here that's important. If we really look at that perspective that you've held on to, what has that costed you so far? Now I did it a little backwards, right? Because I asked her why now before, and if she's ready to overcome it before asking her what it's costed her. But
Oh,
I still hit it.
sure. Yeah. Could have been the last 2 years. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And our brains are a funny place, right? Like part of you knows this isn't good for her. She knows it's not serving her. But there's also the side of you, like I said, that's comfortable, right? That's
Right.
been doing this. And so, like, if that way of thinking were to show itself, the paralysis analysis, the fear of failure, would we as your coaches have your permission to keeping you accountable and empowering you to overcome that?
Oh, I'm always 100% on board for that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Are you
Oh,
sure I'm not always this nice? I'm not always this nice, dog.
yeah, I am
Okay.
sure. I'm not
Okay.
easily offended or like you
Yeah.
can't really hurt my feelings when it comes to business because I want to learn and I want to grow. So that's, yeah.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And what is it about YouTube? So what just happened here, right? Is and again, I think in hindsight, I probably would have gone a little more aggressive. We got her in at the end of the day. What's happening is she just detached herself from this identity that's not serving her. She said she's ready to grow past it. She gave me permission to hold her accountable. In other words, objection handle her. So if that way of thinking were to come up, which it fucking did at the end, there was still a little bit of objection handling. If that way of thinking were to come up, what are we going to do? It's me and her versus the belief that she's running away from, the belief that she's ready to overcome. And now it's not as much of a dogfight anymore at the end, right? Now it's me and her working together to overcome that, which is a lot easier to objection handle than trying to battle her. And the reframes and stuff they use at the end, it's going to land much, much harder. Let's move on to the next example. Now I'm going to show you a different one. And this guy was, I keep saying like people aren't just going to easily follow it because we're ultimately detaching them from an identity that they believe or belief in an identity that they believe is keeping them safe, that they believe is reasonable, is cautious, right? And so they're going to fight you sometimes on it. The last lady fought me a little bit. This dude really fucking fought me on it. So let's dive in. And in that last year, what steps would you say you've taken towards like actually starting something outside of research? So boom, first step, right? To identify what would you say you've done towards overcoming this thing, towards solving this problem, right?
Last year, I mean, I definitely have been on the hunt for a multifamily property.
What?
On the hunt for a multifamily.
Okay.
So I've been in the market for one, but haven't bought one as of yet. I missed out on offers of deals. If that makes sense, but that would be the main thing as far as like business implementation.
Okay. And you've in that time, multifamily obviously takes time, right? It's been 2 years, guys. Keep that in mind, right? Right. So the thing that I'm selling here is starting an online business. So I want to, and we're in part 2, by the way, of gathering context. But because before you can challenge anything, you need to have the context around how they think. And so I want to know, okay, well, when it comes to online business specifically, what have you done?
Into it, I know a few people that I know have had some success with it, but for me, it speaks to me as like making 15 or 30-second videos about different products and being an affiliate. It didn't really seem like the pathway for me. It didn't speak to me as something that I would enjoy and wanted to do. So I kind of was like, that's not gonna be the medium for me.
Okay. Okay. And so I guess outside of obviously pretty sharp dude, right? A year plus is a decent amount of time. Like, what do you think's prevented you from, even if it's not perfect, like just picking something and executing and taking action and then kind of learning as you go? What do you think's prevented you there? So what is this doing? I'm inviting him to allow me to understand his way of thinking. And so we're still in step 2 here. We're still gathering context, right? And I also want to know the story he's been telling himself. That's really important here. Let's keep going.
I mean, not necessarily preventing from me. It's just like you said, just doing it. I think there's something as far as like with what you all presented as far as like a pathway and process. Sometimes I tend to overthink it, especially with like the room to fail with it. So for me, it's just as far as like that. That's kind of what I wanted to do. Like,
Don't let that go over your head. I tend to overthink the room to fail. Really important. You have to listen to the language because he's telling us, right?
a faceless, YouTube process as far as because I know there was definitely some options like earlier when I.
Yeah, what do you mean by overthinking the room to fail though? What do you mean by that? All right, I'm still gathering context. I still need to understand his way of thinking.
Not just as far as like investing the time, investing the money, and it not working, and being like succinct as far as like that process of like making sure that I'm doing and choosing something that is easy and repeatable over time. That's all.
Easy and repeatable over time. This shit is sneaky, right? Like his identity is I am someone who is smart, who pick something that's easy and repeatable over time, and since I haven't found that, I'm protecting my risk by not doing anything. That shit's not serving him well, though. So if I'm understanding, you've been in this place for 1 year where you know you want to start something, you know you need to start something, and the thing that's prevented you is like a little bit of fear of failure. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay. And can I offer a perspective? Boom. Now that I have the context, I have the belief, right? I understand his way of thinking. Now we can go into step 3, which is interrupting the pattern. Can I offer a perspective? Right? This is going to put his guard down because what the fuck is he going to say? No. Right? This is going to put his guard down so that I could be able to swoop up in there and shift the belief, ultimately shift the identity, and influence his identity. I mean, influence his decision making process. So I respect that. I respect the honesty, right? But like, if we look at it, in your opinion, like, what do you think is riskier, or what do you fear more? Is it trying something, it not working out, and learning the experience from it, or continuing to be in this limbo of missing your kids' games, of knowing you need more time, but continuing to work these 80 hours and not doing anything? Like, what do you think you fear more? Right? Remember what we talked about. Fear is illogical, so it can't be overcome with logic. It has to be overcome with emotion. And remember, the best way to do that is to use analogies, stories, or identity anchors, right? And so this is kind of like an analogy of like what's riskier, this or that, so that he can own that the fucking shit he's been doing is riskier, so that he can let go of that way of thinking.
I mean, I fear failing and losing the money. So let me be transparent with that.
It's not a good answer. He fears failing and losing the money more than he fears staying the same. It's not good.
Because it's not just failure in and of itself, right? It's not a free trial, right? It's failure, you lose money, you lose time, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like consequence. It's not just intangible. It's, hey,
Let me ask you this.
see,
So and I respect that, right? So between the last year to now, having not done anything towards that goal and being where we are, where we're working 80 hours and we're still missing the kids' games, do you think that had you started, again, even if it's not perfect, man, but had you started something a year ago, do you think you'd be in a better position to getting out of this job, or a worse position had you started something? Context is really important. You need context about his situation before any of this can land. So I have context over the fact that he works 2 jobs, 80 hours a week. He spends time away from his fucking family. And so I need him to clearly see, had he taken action despite this fear a year ago, 2 years ago, however long it's been, would he be in a better or worse place? Even if it's not perfect.
well, potentially better, for sure. Like, potentially, absolutely.
Potentially better. And so this fear of failure, right? Because that's, if I can be direct, that's what's going to keep you stuck, right? So if we really look at it, like, do you fear more clocking in, continuing to show up, but knowing that you're doing everything in your power to get out of it, right? If we look forward maybe a year from now, another 2 years, or do you fear more still being in this place and looking in the mirror and knowing that you haven't done anything? Like, what do you fear more?
I just fear not executing. So I'll definitely, for me, it's like, I think.
So this is good because now he's starting to shift this perspective, because he says he fears not executing. That's perfect, right? But whereas before he said he fears losing the money and things not working out. So we're making a little bit of progress here.
Thinking of something that I'm passionate about, that can, like, a topic that I feel confident in, and moving forward, I think would be like good. I think that topic is what I've been thinking about.
Yeah, and the how-tos are important, right? But this is more important because there's the business owner and then there's the business, right? So we can talk about the business and step to get in the business, but the business owner needs to be dialed in. That's the most important part. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is key because sometimes these people will try to shift the conversation to talk about, well, what is the thing, right? I haven't found the thing. And what they need to understand is the thing doesn't fucking matter. What matters is them being the type of person to be successful. That's what matters. You said that you fear not executing more. Why do you fear that more? Boom. So now we've done step 4 where we've planted the idea, right? Now I'm asking him to justify. So he tells me he fears not executing more. Okay, well, why that one?
Like I said, there's consequence. So, it's just one of those things where, I'm a person that, again, especially from a fiscal perspective, the last few years is in many ways trying to turn things around. And for me, as far as the business is concerned, I want to make sure that I'm executing said idea for automation. I'm generally familiar with automation, but like, I want to make sure that whatever topic I choose, variety of things that, you know what I mean? Like, I'm able to continue to develop content, to continue to be creative, you
Right.
know, like that. Like, I know that's like the business side, but just that's my mindset. Like, continue to be creative, continue to be in that mindset to develop different things,
Right.
to engage people.
Right.
So
Right.
that's
That's the thing
like,
I'm trying to drive home here, right? Is like, do you think that it is riskier in your situation right now to continue being in this place where the fear of failure is keeping you stuck from doing anything, and we continue analyzing and researching it and nothing changes because you don't take action? Or do you fear more? It doesn't even have to be here with us, but that's important to throw in there. It doesn't even have to be here with us, right? Because then his mind is going to jump into, oh, he's just saying this to sell me the program. Fuck the program. Fuck us. I'm talking about your belief system that's not serving the outcomes that you want. Taking a step, putting a little bit of money forward, putting some time forward, and knowing that you're doing everything in your power to get a better outcome? Or do you fear looking up and nothing has changed because you haven't done what's necessary to change? Like, what do you fear more out of those two?
well, I fear nothing changing.
Why that one? Right? I had to loop that motherfucker around, right? Because he started going off into the rails when, remember, the step that we're at right here is asking them to justify, why do you fear that more? Right? He started talking about, well, I want to like find ideas and stick to the ideas. It's not what I fucking asked you. Why do you fear that more? So we looped it around, and now we're right back. And guys, this is so important, because this is why you need to understand what you're doing and what you're getting out of this, not just a bunch of tactics, not just a bunch of word tracks. Because what happens when a gentleman like this is clinging so hard to this belief or not answering your question, and then you move on, right? If you know what you're looking to get out of it, that won't happen. Well, it will happen, but you're not going to move on, right? You're going to ask it in different ways until you get it exactly as I did here.
I don't want to waste time as far as
Right.
like if there's an opportunity.
Right, right. And this is coming from a good place, man. But is it fair to say that for the last year of knowing that you need to do something, you haven't, because we've kind of been controlled by this fear and this what if?
I mean, I don't think I've been controlled by the fear of the what if. I think you just have to assess things and do a pro con benefit of it.
So this is nuance right here, because I asked him to justify why not that one, right? And now the place that I'm trying to get to is to ask him what it's costed him, but we're moving backwards a little bit, because he isn't accepting that he's been controlled by fear. And so if he's not accepting that, then at the end of the call, when the fear takes over and he doesn't move forward, he still sees it as a rational way of making decisions. He still doesn't see that this way of making decisions is what's keeping him stuck. So I'm glad I asked this question, because that brought this out, which is going to lead to the next part of the conversation we're about to have.
I mean, I don't think I've been controlled by the fear of the what if. I think you just have to assess things and do a pro con benefit of it.
He's reasonable. He's cautious. He has to assess things. He has to do a pro con benefit for over a year.
For me, like I said, I've made strides, which is good, and I think
Right.
leaving no stone unturned as far as time and so on and so forth is continued to be good. Like, it's like,
Here, can I say something direct here without offending you? This is where we need to be a little more aggressive, because he's veering off into the wrong path a little too far. That is going to be pretty abrasive. Is that okay?
sure.
Yeah. So you said that the reason you haven't done anything is because you've been overthinking the room to fail. That's what you said, right?
Right.
Yeah. Listening and context is key. And so if we look at this past year, and again, this is coming from a good place, so don't take it the wrong way, but the fact you haven't started anything because of overthinking the room to fail, is it fair to say that this fear of failure, or this what if it doesn't work mindset, has controlled the decision making, ultimately leading to you not doing anything?
I mean, for me, I would say I would disagree, but
Sure,
I mean,
disagree.
I would see as far as you bringing the point, for sure. Like, I understand the way you're, juxtaposing those.
Well, what do you disagree with? Let's unpack it. We don't want him to just agree to agree, so I'm glad he's telling me that he disagrees. But this identity, when the way he sees himself, is fighting really hard to stay. And so we gotta stay in that ring. Usually this takes like 5 to 7 minutes. This took almost 14 to 15 minutes, right? But there was no objections at the end of the call because of this 14 to 15 minutes. What do you disagree with? Because if we don't unpack this, then you never get out of this loop, and you always work 90 hours. So let's talk about it. What do you disagree with?
I mean, I would disagree that the decision is just made out of fear. I think
The lack of the indecision is what we're talking about. The indecision has been from a place of fear, at least from the words you're using, unless I'm misunderstanding. Because when you say you haven't done anything because you've been overthinking the room to fail, and you've been assessing and analyzing, and you don't want to put time, money, and effort for it, and then it not working out. And then I ask if it's fair to say that we've been in this place of inaction because of the fear of it not working. Then you don't agree. Then I want to understand what part you don't agree with that and like how you see it.
Sure. I guess you could say, yeah, you could say the indecision is from that piece.
Okay.
And we're not just saying this to mind fuck him, right? It's because this is the way of thinking that is in the driver's seat that's keeping him stuck. So I don't want him to just agree to agree.
Okay. Okay. And we're on the same team here, man.
That's called a help frame, right? When you say things like we're on the same team, like, you know, it's not me versus you. This is to put their guard down if they're starting to get defensive, to support this identity that they so wholeheartedly believe in. Let's keep going.
What makes you agree? Just to make sure that we're on the same page. What makes you agree at that point?
So yeah, what makes me agree is like you so eloquently put, overthinking has led to inaction. Simple as that.
Right. And so maybe a better
Now he's owning it. This is good.
question from the heart here. Like, how much longer do we want this overthinking? Do we want this over assessing and this fear?
So I think I missed the part of what it's costed him, but we're jumping to number 7 of how much longer do you want this to continue happening?
Your failure to continue holding you back from acting and ultimately having you missing out time with your family. How much longer do we want that way of thinking to go on?
Not long. That's why we're on the call.
Yeah. Yeah. And being on the, and I know I'm challenging you here, it's in your best interest, I promise. Being on the call is a good first step, right? Like, let's look at an overweight person or just anyone, right? Just a person. You go to the fridge, let's say you're hungry, and you open up the fridge doors, you look at it.
I fucked up my analogies because this has nothing to do with overweight people, but that's why I corrected myself. That's why I'm here. That means that he thinks that being here on this call in and of itself is action. He thinks that that is enough. And so that's another belief that we need to reframe. Because if being on this call is enough, well, why would he move forward at the end? Right?
Everything that's in the fridge, you're looking at information. This call is you looking at information. But unless you execute, nothing really changes, right? So for you, when we look at this fear of failure, like, do you feel like that's worth holding on to, or should we maybe start to let go of that? 'Cause that's what's going to keep you stuck, not a business model.
You can take
Right? Are you ready to overcome it, right? Is it worth holding on to, or should we start to let go of that? Remember what I've said a million fucking times. We're detaching him from the belief, the identity that's not serving him into one that is.
a look at that and see if we can debunk that for sure.
Right? Because what has that costed you so far? If you really, really look at it.
Okay, see, I didn't skip it. I didn't skip number 6 about what it's costed him. I just did it in a different order, right? You got to be able to fucking move with the punches. You got to roll with the punches in this motherfucker.
And so again, like, do you think it's really serving you the best? And I'm not.
What it's cost me, I'll say time.
Right. Right. And so again, like, do you think it's really serving you the best? And I'm not saying it's gonna happen tomorrow or the next day, but do you think it's serving you the best, or should we start to like let go of that, as uncomfortable as it may be?
We should definitely find ways to cope with it for sure, to
Right.
navigate away from it.
Right. Right. And when it comes to navigating away
So boom, right? We need to let go of it. We need to overcome it. And so now, why now? Why now to let go of that shit?
from it, when it comes to executing and not overthinking, why now to let go of that? What's different now after all these years?
What's different now?
Mhm.
I mean, because I've been doing things differently as far as from a physical perspective, and been executing in many arenas. So it's one of those things where things have progressed in a lot of ways. Things have gotten better. It's just that with this piece again, you know, I've done well in these things now. This piece of SARS time is the main kind of target. So how do we again kind of roll back in a sense?
This is kind of a bullshitty answer, and the reason I accept it is because I'm like, okay, I have enough of him separating himself from this identity and this way of thinking that if it were to show up, we'll be able to work with it. We'll be able to move, right? And so now the final part is permission to objection handle.
Brains are funny because part of you knows it's observing him and knows that's obviously held him back and he's losing time with his family, but there's also the side of you that's comfortable researching and thinking without executing, right? That's comfortable prolonging. So I guess my question for you is, if that way of thinking were to show itself, the overthinking or the fear, would we as your coaches have your permission to keep you accountable and empowering you to overcome that if that way of thinking were to show itself?
me and him versus the way of thinking he's looking to get away from. It's not me versus him. So if that way of thinking were to show itself, do I have your permission to keeping you accountable and empowering you to overcome that?
Yeah.
Are you sure? I'm not always this nice. Are you sure?
I'm not always this nice. I'm not always this nice. I fucking love saying that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, we're having a conversation. Yeah. Start the process, and well, yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of it, to try to again navigate, create this new medium as far as the channel is concerned, and like, yeah, that's the whole point of it for sure.
Right, because unfortunately, man, we'll fight, kick, and scream to stay comfortable, even if it's not serving us. And I would hate to see that follow you. So as long as the fighting, kicking, and screaming, as long as that happens, we can keep you accountable. That's what's going to get you out of this. So we have your permission there.
Yeah.
Good, good, good. And
Boom. Now, what have we done? We've identified the belief that's not serving him. He's fucking fought me on it, but we've identified it. We've detached him from it. We've asked him if he's ready to overcome it. He said yes. Why now? He told us. And then he's given us permission to objection handle. So if the objection were to come up at the end, it's not a dogfight, right? We're not battling anymore. This is that way of thinking showing itself. So this is your chance to be able to act despite of it. Remember what I said earlier. We don't need to eliminate the fear. We just need to empower them to be able to act despite the fear. Right? Let's go to the next one. Okay, so now let's talk about some motherfucking money, right? So what's actually happening here? So someone's saying I didn't have the money. This is their relationship with money is what we're handling. And ultimately what that is them disguising it as powerlessness. I don't have the money means I don't have the power is ultimately what they're saying, right? So how does this one show up? They'll say things like, I didn't have the money, simple, right? I couldn't afford it, or I needed to be in a better financial position first. So what's actually happening here? They're protecting themselves. Again, it's their relationship with money, right? Remember what we said up here. Using money as a stay safe to avoid risk, waiting for better conditions before acting, right? Lack of money becomes a stop signal as opposed to getting resourceful when money is tight, as opposed to investing to change future conditions, as opposed to using money to buy speed, leverage, and outcomes. So if we come down here, right, they're protecting short-term financial discomfort. They're not lacking options. Right? Saying I don't have the money removes the responsibility and it places it on the problem on outside control. It allows them to stay safe without confronting the trade-offs, the risks, the commitment. So what's the flawed belief here? It's I have to wait until I have the money because it'll be safer to move forward. Why does this kill decisions? More money does not create better decisions. It simply delays them. And so them waiting to feel financially comfortable before taking action, it guarantees three things. It guarantees that they're going to continue to miss opportunity. It guarantees that they're going to continue to slow their growth and continue to be stagnant. And this is ultimately the loop that we're trying to break here. Discomfort, which leads to financial caution, which leads to justification, which leads to the identity of I'm being responsible. It's similar to the dude from earlier, right? The procrastination guy, right? He thinks that he's being responsible, right? And the cool thing about this, like I keep saying, is like it's like an identity is formed from a cluster of beliefs. So sometimes these people will have like a couple of these together, right? It'll be a procrastination and money combined, right? Or maybe it'll be like money and knowledge combined, or time and ego combined. So this is why it's important for you to understand what's actually going on. So how do we actually shift this? Very simple. And what you're going to see is I don't like to overcomplicate shit. It's very purposely a repeatable process for all of them. If you know what you're listening for, you'll be able to take this and apply it to all of them. So first step, identify, right? What steps would you say you've taken towards solving XYZ logical problems so that you can overcome the emotional problem? Oh, I've been watching YouTube. I've been reading. I've been doing all this shit. Okay. What's prevented you from actually taking action? And then that's where we're going to find that belief, right? After we gather more context of I didn't have the money, right? Or I was waiting to save up, or, something along these lines. I couldn't afford it, right? They're exposing their relationship with money when they say this. Pattern interrupt. Can I offer a perspective? Yes. So money's an interesting topic Because money is ultimately the reason you need to do something, so that you have more money to overcome X problem, Y problem, and Z problem. Say this a million times, guys. Context is so important because you can actually use their real problems here. Money is, so that you can be able to spend more time with the family, so that you can be able to, leave your job, like whatever outcomes, whatever problems that they're trying to solve. It's the reason you need to do something, but it also sounds like the reason you haven't. It's a contradiction. To be like, okay, it's kind of like an overweight person saying, I'll start going to the gym when I lose weight. Do you see how the reason you need to do something has simultaneously been the reason you haven't? Yes. Okay. How so? Well, because I've allowed money to be the reason that I haven't gotten the help I need. Now they see the contradiction, and this remains true for everyone, right? There's a good chance that they're going to try to push back on you here. It may not be as easy as them just accepting it. Remember, we're shifting beliefs that form their identity, the identity that keeps them safe. They will try to defend the belief. But now that you have the fundamental understanding of why this belief is not serving them, you'll be able to stay in that ring with them, right? Then, after you ask them, how the reason you need to do something has been the reason that you haven't, okay, how so? Right? And they're going to tell you, like I said up there. And like, what has that way of thinking costed you so far? X, Y, and Z. How much longer do you want it to continue costing you that? Pay attention to my tone. I'm downward inflecting. It's a fucking serious conversation. How much longer do you want it to continue costing you that? Right, I don't know why I have this shit twice. Oh, not much longer. Okay. Well, are you ready to overcome that way of thinking? Yes. Now, the same as the others, right? When we're shifting a belief that's been in the driver's seat, they may try to use loose language to protect the identity, to protect the belief. They may say things like, I think, or I hope. You don't want to let that slide. Right? The same as procrastination. This means they're still holding on to that identity and we haven't fully shifted it. So if they use loose language, you're going to say this. Okay, and I probably say you're ultimately trying to get them to use certain language. So you don't have to use these exact words, right? Don't be a fucking script dummy. It may sound like I'm being nitpicky here, but when we think about solving XYZ problem and we think about what's required to getting there, and then you say, I think I'm ready or I hope I'm ready, do you think that kind of language serves those outcomes well? No. Okay, what do you think we can say instead? I am ready. Right? They're going to say something along these lines. You need commitment. You need committal language. Okay? Then after that, why now? Right? After 4 years, 5 years, 3 years, 6 months, what is actually different now that you're ready to let go of that way of thinking? Right? Hold the space. And if that way of, and then number 10, if that way of thinking were to show itself, would we as your coaches have your permission to keeping you accountable and empowering you to overcome that? This is what we call a 10-piece combo. Okay, we're gonna come in there, we're gonna set them up with the jab, and then we're gonna hit them with the cross, and then we're gonna hit them with 2 bodies, right? We're gonna finish with the hook. Still not even 10 punches, whatever. Are you sure? I'm not always this nice. This is a lighthearted way of telling them you're going to whoop that ass if they have any objections at the end, because now you've successfully separated them from the belief that's not serving them well, right? And then from there, like, you have more leverage in objection handling, right? So, and then you could pick the energy back up because now we're going to go into the future pace, right? We're going to go into the heaven island. Okay, what is it about this that has you, that, that makes you feel like this could potentially serve it, solve the problem for you? Okay, and like, what does success actually look like? Right now, we can pick up the energy. We could pick up the tone. Let's look at an example of this. So, step number 1, you should know by now, is to ask them what steps they've taken to identify, right? Okay, and so 3 months, you realize something needs to change. I need to have a business, right? And so in that 3 months, what steps would you say you've taken towards now building a business that doesn't just rely on the markets, that has more stability?
Researching, how do you, I was researching Airbnb, I was researching remote jobs, because there's lots of remote jobs now.
Okay.
And I'm also a musician, so
So when you hear this, you may think, oh, this is the procrastination, but that's why the next question is so important of what's prevented him. So now we know what belief we're gonna actually attack here, right?
like keys and DJing, so I'm just researching my talent.
Okay.
My whole family is kind of like, well, I finished with music academy in Germany, so I was trying to use my talent to make money too. But this is a small town; you can't do much, in this town. I mean, this is not really a big city that you can go and DJ in big clubs. The clubs are shutting down because it's economy, and these people are more. I'm more like a deep techno guy, and most of the people here listen to top 40 shit. You know what I'm saying? No offense, but
Yeah. No, no, no. That's fair. That's fair. I don't think Iowa would have a lot of that, right? So that makes sense. And so in that 3 months, you said you've done research. Obviously you're a pretty sharp dude. Like, what do you think has prevented you from going from research into like actually executing and building?
He's a sharp dude. We're identity framing him here. Sneaky, right? Now, this is what's going to tell us, is it because he's going to say one of two things. Oh, I wanted to make sure I have all the knowledge before doing something. Okay, now we know that the belief we're dealing with is procrastination. But what does he say?
The startup costs, to be honest with you.
Boom. Now we know money. Now we know the path to take, right? So number two is to gather context, which we just did. Now number three is to pattern interrupt, right? Well, I'm gathering more context first. Like, what is
like for example, one of the programs I was looking at, you need at least 10K to set up it, and I don't want to start something. Like I said, I don't have a steady income, and
Mr. Prospect, I'm about to ask you for like 8K. Let's keep going.
the 10K right now is lots of money for me, and I have invested. I already have let me see. Hold on a second. I have already 47 grand into one thing. I like the diversity. You know what I'm saying? I don't like having one place where all my money is. That's why kind of spread around. But I want to also have like something that I'm like this kind of seems really good because I was reading about it, and I want to have something like you just established. Like I want to do something that it's my primary job. I want to put this as a side job.
Right, right. And so it sounds like you said money has been the reason, like setup costs is what's prevented you from starting.
I'm laser focused. I don't care about any of the other shit he said, right? Now I know the belief that I'm about to handle here. So that's the only thing that matters.
Right.
Yeah. So money is
Boom. Where are we now? Plant the idea, right?
interesting, man. Can I offer like a perspective? Is that okay?
Obviously, you gotta pattern interrupt before planning the idea. But after he gives me permission, after I pattern interrupt there, right? Now watch where we take it.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Go ahead.
So money is an interesting topic, right? Because money, at the end of the day, money is the reason you need support and the reason that you need to do something.
Right.
That you can have more money to move to St. Pete's, right? To not have to get a job and spend more time with your daughter.
Context, context, context.
To ultimately live, to travel, to do the things that you said, to have stability. Money is the reason you need to do something, but it sounds like it's also the reason you haven't,
Right.
right? It's almost like an over.
Right? Now what are we doing? Right? So we've pattern interrupted, we're continuing to plant the idea. So the first part is the analogy. Is the, pointing out the contradictions, the reason you need to, so you could do X, Y, Z, but it sounds like it's the reason you don't. Now we use the analogy. Fear can't be overcome by logic, has to be overcome by emotion. This is how you do it. Analogies, stories, identity anchors.
Overweight person, a 300, 400 pound person saying, I know I need to lose weight. I know I need to go to the gym to lose weight, but I'm gonna start. Let me lose the weight first, and then I'm gonna go to the gym, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see how the reason that you've needed to do something has
Yeah.
and the reason you haven't?
Point out the contradiction.
Did you finish up psychology or something? What your degree in?
Similar, man. Similar. My degree's in helping people,
My degree's in helping people, dog.
right?
Yeah.
Because if I can say something direct here without offending you,
Yeah. That's cool, man. Go for it.
that's what's gonna keep you stuck.
Ooh.
That's what's gonna keep you in this place.
Yeah.
Because do you see how your relationship with money, again, the reason you need to has ultimately been the reason you haven't? Like, do you see how that's been a self-sabotaging loop?
Right? Now where are we? Plant the idea, ask them to justify it, right? We're at step 5.
Yep.
Yeah. And like, do you see how that way of thinking is what's potentially kept us in this place?
Right.
right?
Yeah. So I guess the right question is, and it's not overnight. It's not going to happen tomorrow or the next day, right?
Ah, motherfucker. I didn't ask him to justify it. Let's keep going though.
But that way of thinking of hesitancy to put money forward when we know we need money, do you think that's worth keeping, or should we maybe start to let go of that way of thinking?
I think we should let it go. I mean, I should let it go.
Yeah, because if we really look at it, man, like what has that costed you so far?
Right? So for some reason, I did not ask him to justify how it's costed him that. But we're moving on. We're at step 6. Ask him what it's costed him.
That perspective.
$500,000 Forex.
Yeah.
I lost $500,000 and yeah, when when the Brits and United Europe, Europe United, whatever,
Hmm.
EU separated, I lost $497,000.
This is insane. I was not even expecting an answer like that from him. That one question of what has it costed him, I find out it's costed him half an M. Let's keep going.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so that's what I'm kind of
And it all goes back to your relationship with money, though. Because I
yes.
could show you all this cool, sexy AI shit and the technical stuff. Like, I could show you all that. But this, like I said, is what's going to keep you stuck, right?
Mhm.
And so I guess I know I'm being direct here, but it's because I want to help. Like, how
Help frame. Help frame. We're on the same team. It's not me versus you. I want to help. You have to see these things in, especially when you're challenging.
much longer do we want to continue allowing this fear of letting go of money or this hesitancy be the reason that we continue to not have stability? Like, how much longer do you want that to go on?
I mean, I can survive if I keep it so long. You know what I mean? Because it's a safety net for running. Every day is running lower and lower because you got your life and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, are you willing, again, I'm not saying it'll happen the next day or tomorrow, but are you willing to take the steps to actually let go of that way of thinking so that you can build something that gives you the stability and control?
Step 8. Are you ready to overcome that way of thinking?
I have to,
I have to. I have to.
and I want you to be honest with you. I don't want to be stuck, like you said, in this loophole that I'm always scared to lose money and stuff like that.
Yeah, and why now to let go of that?
Boom. Why now? Right? Number 9.
Right?
Like, why? Like, why now to let go of that?
Why now? Because I need to reset my way of thinking.
Okay.
I mean, that's why I kind of need to talk to a person. Everything that I do now is emails, text messages. I never talked to anybody in the last 6 months about anything like regarding this new adventure. So when I talk to you guys or you or somebody like that, that can be kind of like, hey, this is it. This is real shit.
And talking is a good first step, man. Talking is a good
Yeah,
first step. But if we don't have this conversation, then that fear, it's going to show itself and continue to keep you stuck in this loop and this fear of losing money. You see
right.
what I'm saying? So he talked about psychology, right? Like our brains are funny, and part of you knows this isn't serving him, and he knows he needs to let go of it, but there's a level of comfort attached to
Now we're stepping into step 10, right? Do we have your permission to keep you accountable? Do we have your permission to objection handle you?
that, even though it's not serving you. Right? So if that way of thinking were to show itself, or if the fear were to show itself, would we as your coaches have your permission to keeping you accountable and empowering you to overcome that?
Yeah.
Are you sure, man? I'm not always this nice. Are you sure?
I'm not always this nice. I'm not always this nice.
Oh, no. Yeah, you're right. Because, I was in a comfort zone making the kind of money when I was working, but money was coming in.
Right.
Now money just goes out. And like I said, I'm not okay with this, because like I need to do something to change that. I don't want to be in my life's. I need to get out of my comfort zone. There you go. That's what I want to say.
That's right. I respect that. Right? Because
This is a little bonus, right? This is a little bonus identity frame here.
there's some people, I don't want to say hard-headed, but we just can't help, right? Who
Mhm.
know that they're in their comfort zone, who know it's not serving them, but then when it's time to do something, well, they want to stay in that comfort zone and then wonder why they never grow, wonder why they stay stuck.
Right.
So I'm glad that's not the conversation that you and I are having.
And boom, just like that, we've been able to separate the man from the belief that is not serving him, which ultimately forms the identity that's not serving him, which ultimately forms the decision making process that is not serving him, that's been in the driver's seat Were he to give me a financial objection, we have so much leverage to be able to help him out of his own way. Okay, we are back. Now we're talking about time. So I'm sure you can see the patterns in almost all of these, right? So how's time gonna sound? Oh, I haven't had the time. Things have been really busy. I need things to slow down first. And now you understand how broke people think versus how motherfucking losers think, right? I'll just say unsuccessful people, right? We don't have to call them losers. And like I said, like you may have some of these beliefs too, right? Which is why you have to overcome it within yourself. And so, unsuccessful people let busyness dictate priorities versus reallocating time towards what creates leverage, right? The identity is I'm just busy versus I decide what matters, right? We already talked about that earlier. And so now, when we talk about how that shows up on a sales call and the types of things they may say, haven't had the time, things have been busy, I need things to slow down first. So, what's actually happening here? They are avoiding the discomfort of reprioritization. They're not lacking hours. But when they say something like, I don't have the time, what's happening is they are externalizing, right? They're putting the decision on an external constraint, which removes their responsibility and protects their identity, which ultimately removes their power to change their situation, right? Because if it's an external reason of not having time, well, then the external has to change. They just have to have a bunch of readily available time for anything to happen. And so this allows them to delay action without admitting that they chose something else instead. I'm gonna give you some extreme examples here so to drive this home. Belief, because more likely than not, whatever it is you're selling is most likely a means for them to have time in one way or another, either more time or more quality time. If you sell a biz op or business coaching, then this one's obvious, right? A more efficient business gives them more time, or just the business gives them more time. If you're selling fitness, they're gonna have quality of time, right, with their family if they're healthier, right? Their health is improved, their mood, etc. Right? If you're selling career coaching and they're looking for work-life balance in a new job, time is the outcome that they're after. So it can't be the reason that they don't, right? But it is. It's the reason that they haven't acted. Do you see how this way of thinking makes zero fucking sense? Right? Why this killed decisions is because time doesn't just appear out of thin air, it's reallocated. And so waiting for life to slow down means it's again waiting for the external to change before them grabbing life by the balls and making the fucking decision to change. Right? And so this means waiting for fewer responsibilities, waiting for less pressure, waiting for a moment that'll never come. So they stay stuck in this loop of they're overwhelmed, so they deprioritize, so they justify, and then their identity is, well, I'm just a busy person. Well, I'm just realistic. So what is the reframe you're creating here, right? You're taking them from this column to this column, right? And so where were we? The reframe you're creating, busyness is not a blocker, it's a constraint to solve. And the reason that they want the outcome cannot also be the reason that they avoid it. If it mattered enough, time would be made. So the process here is going to be very similar to the rest. What steps would you say you've taken towards solving the logical problem, right? Towards starting the business, towards getting the support, towards losing the weight, so that you can overcome the emotional problem. Not many steps. You're going to say something along those lines. Oh, I haven't really done much. Or maybe they're going to say the shit above. Oh, I've been researching, right? Okay, this is what's going to tell you. This question right here of what's prevented you from taking action, of gathering context, is going to tell you what belief we're dealing with. I haven't had the time. Boom. Now, they may say that up here, though, right? So we're going to pattern interrupt them. Okay, can I offer a perspective? Yes. And then we're going to use the overweight analogy. So time's an interesting topic because, like, time's ultimately the reason you need to do something, right? So that you can have more time to overcome X, Y, and Z emotional problem. So it can't simultaneously, it's been the reason you need to do something, but it also sounds like the reason you haven't. Okay. So there's something along those lines, right? It's kind of like an overweight person saying, I'll start going to the gym when I lose weight. Do you see it? How the reason that you've needed to do something has also been the reason you haven't? Yes. Okay, how so? Well, because I have a lot of time to be the reason I don't change. Now they see the contradiction. Like I said, in all the others, they are probably going to try to push back on you here. We're shifting beliefs. We're shifting that the beliefs that form their identity that keeps them safe, that has them seeing themselves as a reasonable, cautious, smart person. So they may not always easily accept that, or maybe they will, or you just have to keep that in mind. And I'm not trying to paint it. And that's why I showed you some examples of people fighting me back on it. So it won't always be that easy. And the example I'm gonna show you for this one is gonna be a dude who fought me pretty hard on it, right? Ask what it's costed them. What does this way of thinking costed you so far? How much, I don't know why I put that there. How much longer do you want to cost you that? Are you ready to overcome that? Why now? Do I have your permission to keeping you accountable, right? The cliff notes under here are going to be the same if they use loose language, right? The same as I said for the other examples, right? This is you asking for permission to objection handle them. And then after they say yes, this is a lighthearted way of saying, I'm going to whoop that ass if you try to give me objections at the end. Let's see it live in action now. Boom, let's get it. Now, this is the example. It's with that goal that you've had for a year, right? But what I'm
Yes.
asking is, what steps would you say you've taken towards building your own business with that goal that you've had for a year?
I can't really say I've taken a lot of steps, to be honest with you.
Cool. Now we just asked the first question. Step one, what have you done? Not many steps. Okay. Now step two, gather context. Okay. We'll unpack it, man. We'll have some light bulbs together. We'll have some light bulbs. What
Yeah.
do you think's prevented you so far?
Could you repeat that? I'm so sorry.
What do you
My
think has
hearing
prevented
is
you? What do you think has prevented you so far? Well, I said we'll unpack it. We'll unpack it.
prevented me time. Honestly,
Now we know what belief we're dealing with, time, right? If you would have said money, we'd follow money. If you would have said figure it out alone, research, but now we know we're dealing with time. Boom.
time is probably one of the biggest things because once I'm done from work, I'm pretty much still at work, even at home. I'm trying to figure out how everything's gonna go, how's my coworkers, gonna do, making sure everything's organized for the next day.
Okay.
Until my days off. Once my days are off, then it's filled with family events or get-togethers or something that I have to go to.
Do you hear the story he's telling himself? When I'm not at work, then I'm still thinking about work, or I got to deal with family gatherings. Like, he is rooted in this identity of I'm a busy person and I'm responsible, right? It's the responsible thing to do. I just don't have the time. I'm not going to accept that, though. It's not serving him. Okay. So, time can I offer a perspective. Pattern interrupt so that we could drop his guard. Number
Yes,
two.
sir.
Number three, I mean. Yeah. So time is an interesting topic because time's all. After we've pattern interrupted and we have space, now we're planning the idea. Number four, ultimately the reason you need to do something, right? So that you're not working 60 hours. So you're not, again, working when you're not working. So you're not in
Yes.
these labor-intensive environments. Time is the reason you need to. It can't also be the reason you don't. Context to point out the contradiction. Right? It's like an overweight 300-pound person saying, I'll start going to the gym when I lose weight. Let me lose weight first, then I'll start going to the gym. Do you see how letting time be the reason you don't take action when it's the reason you need to? Do you see how that has kept you in this loop here?
Yeah.
Right? So we've planted the idea, right? Using the analogy. Now we're going to ask him, and we pointed out the contradiction. Now we're going to ask him to justify it. Yeah. And do you see how that way of thinking has kept you stuck?
Yes, because it's all repetitive.
Boom. Right. Okay. And you're smart for seeing that, right? But when we really, really look at it, man, that perspective, that way of thinking, what has that costed you so far? Reward him for, being in alignment with someone who's close to letting go of that way of thinking, right? Accepting it, at least accepting that it's not serving him. Now we're in step 5. What has that way of thinking costed you?
A lot mentally, physically, hearing.
Yeah. Right? We're firing through this shit. The fuck is funny? He's laughing like shit is sweet. Right? Now we're in step 7. How much longer do you want it to cost you that? And so how much longer do you want
to continue telling yourself this.
Also, pay close attention to my energy and my tone here. I'm not laughing with him because shit's not funny, right? Sometimes your prospects will do this, guys. They will laugh to try to alleviate the tension, and then some of y'all will laugh with them. Nothing is funny, and you don't want to alleviate the tension because what you're working so hard to build for him to change, it's all going to be gone if you laugh with him. Do not laugh.
The story of I don't have time and allowing it to cost you the mental peace, the clarity, the hearing, like you said. How much longer do you want that to continue?
Honestly, I don't want it to continue.
Yeah. And I know I'm challenging you here, man. It's in your best interest, right?
No, you're good.
Because, like, I guess the better question
Where are we now? Ask them if they're ready to overcome it, right?
is, like, are you ready
Number 8.
to let go of that way of thinking if I don't have time and get resourceful with the time so that you could get out of your situation?
To want to move forward, with using my time a lot wiser.
Yeah. And why now?
Right? Firing through it. Yes, I want to, I'm ready to let go of that way of thinking. Why now? So this is where we really stay in the ring right here because he gives me a lot of shitty ass answers for the why now, right? Don't let this go over your head.
To change that relationship with time rather than like using it as a reason not to do something. What's different now?
Family.
Okay, what do you mean?
The reason for wanting to use my time a lot wiser, or how exactly are you wording it?
Yeah, the like not letting time respectfully, like not using the excuse of I don't have time and that's why I'm not starting something or that's why I haven't started something. Like why now to let go of that way of thinking?
Because I only have so much time on this place.
That's a Tony Robbins ass answer. We're not taking that.
I guess that'd probably be.
Okay. Like I said, we'll have some light bulbs, man. Dig deeper. Dig deeper. Because that's been the case last year too,
Yeah.
right? So like why get resourceful now? Why be the person
I think in hindsight, I probably wouldn't have smiled the way I did, to be honest.
who is worthy of not having to work a job anymore, the person who's worthy of not having to answer to a boss, of not having to do these things. Because it starts with your own relationship with time. So why now to break that way of thinking? What's actually different?
Honestly, I don't have an answer to that.
Oh, we're going to find a motherfucking answer.
Okay? So maybe a better way to ask it then is why change anything? Why not just continue doing what you're doing?
I want freedom.
Okay.
Shit's not sweet. We're not laughing with them.
We want freedom.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest ones.
Yeah. And is it like a series of events? Well, let me ask you this, man, because like I'll use fitness as an example, like I always do. I
Yeah.
always use fitness analogies. I used to like work with like really big people, and there's typically either a series of events or a moment that is like, I'm tired of being this way. And so I remember I had a client that said that her daughter
I got this analogy from one of my mentors, by the way. This is really powerful.
sat on her lap, his lap, I mean, sat on his lap and squeezed his stomach and said, Dad, why are you so squishy? Now, kids are fucking innocent. They don't even know what they're asking.
Yeah.
Or another one, Dad, how come every time we play, you get so tired?
And also, what we're doing here is we're using, remember what I said, stories, analogies, and identity anchors. So we're using stories here to be able to to get to the emotional part of the brain, and also to kind of hold his hand in figuring out why actually fucking change.
So quick. These are the things that make people change. Or it's a series of events that they're fed up with. And so if we've been in this loop, if we've been in this pattern, if we've wanted better for ourselves, but we've constantly made reasons as to why we can't do what's required to get better, what are you seeing right now that is your fuck it, that is your fuck it moment of no, I have to figure it out and I have to make the time. Because if we don't unpack this, fuck the program, right? It'll continue to show itself
Yeah.
even if you try to start something.
My fuck it moment is probably getting mentally bullied, I guess, in a way.
Okay, what do you mean?
So it's like with this job.
That's a real answer. That is a real answer. I'm tired of getting mentally bullied. That's a lot more powerful than, oh, I'm just here for, I'm not here forever. I only have a limited amount of time. Okay, Tony Robbins, we need a real fucking answer. That's a real fucking answer.
For the past 6 to 7 years that I've been with the company, it's always been, you're just a pawn. You're just a pawn for this company, and we can toss you away at any moment. And I think that's why I've always strived and driven to do what I can to keep my spot as a pawn. I'm kind of fed up with it.
Respect that. That's a fucking real answer, right? That's a much realer answer than
So first of all, so obviously we're identity framing him and we're rewarding him, right, for actually answering correctly. Also, like, I'm following a framework, but I'm also being myself. I curse a lot, curse like a sailor, and I do this on my calls too. And I don't need to cover up who I am just because I'm following a framework. It's really important. A lot of you feel like you can't be yourself. You can still be yourself while following a framework, while still holding someone to a high standard.
we only have so much time on this planet. Because it's the same thing. We do only have so much time on this planet, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to live the rest of your life being a pawn, being mentally bullied by this job. Fuck the job, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir.
Boom. Right now we've been able to separate him from the way of thinking of I don't have time. We're shifting his belief when it comes to his relationship with time, which is ultimately shifting his identity, which is ultimately influencing his decision-making process. So if you were to give an objection at the end, we have the leverage to be able to help him out of his own way. Let's jump into the next one. Welcome back. Now we're talking about ego, right? I'm sure by now you're starting to see the patterns. You're starting to see exactly what we're doing and how we shift beliefs. So let's come back to this chart. Ego tries to do everything, unsuccessful person tries to do it on their own to protect their identity. Successful person uses help, frameworks, and coaching, right? Stay in trial and error, buys clarity instead of grinding blindly. And the identity of an unsuccessful person is I'm independent versus the identity of a successful person is I optimize with help, right? So how does this sound? Thought I could figure it out alone. I wanted to try on my own first. I didn't want to rely on anyone. I keep fucking saying, a lot of you probably hold or have held this belief. So you have to be able to identify this stuff within yourselves, right? So what's actually happening here? They're protecting identity, not capability, right? Needing help threatens how they see themselves. Smart, capable, self-reliant. So they choose to preserve the identity even if it slows their progress. And what's the flawed belief here? If I can't figure this out myself, well, then doesn't that mean I'm incompetent? Doesn't that mean I'm stupid? Why does this kill decisions? High performers, successful people don't avoid help. They avoid wasting time. Trying to do everything alone creates these trial and error loops. It creates the slower feedback and they delay the results. So what's the loop that we're trying to get them out of? Uncertainty leads to solo attempts, which leads to justification, which leads to the identity of I'm independent, like we said above. So where are you trying to get them? The reframe you're creating here is self-reliance and self-sabotage are not the same thing. Asking for help is not weakness, it's leverage. The fastest path is rarely the solo one, right? And so we're shifting. So this is exactly how we're going to do it, right? It's going to be the same process, except with time. With ego. And the second question is what's going to help us understand what we're actually dealing with. So what steps would you say you've taken towards solving the problem so you could solve the logical problem so you could solve the emotional problem? Oh, I've just been figuring it out alone, right? Or some of the shit up here. Wanted to try alone first, didn't want to rely on anyone. Cool. What's prevented you from getting outside support? I thought I could figure it out on myself, right? Like I said here, this is what's going to help us identify what we're actually dealing with, because they may say money, they may say knowledge, right? And then we're going to take that route. In this case, though, we're gonna say it's an ego thing, not money, right? So we're gonna listen very closely to their language, right? Then we're gonna pattern interrupt. Can I offer a perspective? Yes. Plant the idea. There's no real need for an analogy here, right? We're just gonna say, do you see how this way of thinking of let me figure it out alone has kept you stuck? Yes. Again, they may fight you here. But it's okay, because you know the why behind the what. You're not just regurgitating word tracks. You're smarter than that, right? How so, in your opinion? Well, because I've been spinning my wheels, right? Like I've said, in all of them, their identity is what keeps them safe. It's their self-image. They may try to defend that self-image because right now they're seeing it as, well, I'm an independent person, which is a good thing, which is a responsible thing, which is a cautious thing. But we're shifting that. Okay, and what is that way of thinking? What has that costed you so far? X, Y, and Z, right? And then number 7, okay, how much longer do you want it to cost you that? Are you ready to overcome it? Why now? Do I have your permission to keeping you accountable? And same as every other one, if they use loose language, you're going to shift that language, right? They're going to be more conscious of it to use certain language. We need certain language here, because if they're using loose language, that means you haven't successfully shifted the identity, okay? So I know I sound like I'm being nitpicky here, but when we think about solving this problem and what's required to getting there, then you say, I think, or I hope. Do you think that serves those outcomes well? No. What can we say instead? I am ready. Okay, why now are you ready? Right? And if that way of thinking were to show itself, do we have your permission to keep you accountable? Are you sure? I'm not always this nice. Which again is a lighthearted way of telling them you're gonna whoop that ass if that way of thinking were to show itself right before we turn up the energy, we go into heaven, we start talking about the future, and we get them on that la la land. Let's see it live in action. Welcome back. So now we're gonna see the ego example live and in action. So it sounds like up and down for the last 19 years, but intensely for the last year.
Yes.
Yeah. What steps would you say you've taken towards like getting the support to be able to have more of that mindfulness and that control over your emotions in that 20 years? Step 1, right? What steps would you say you've taken?
Yeah, so I have meditated for periods of time, and that helped.
Hold up. I know you see the cut. I know you see the fucking cut. I was sharp.
Extend. What helped me back in the day when I was like in high school and college was journaling, so I'll do that a little bit. I can't seem to keep any of these habits consistent though. And that's really about it, honestly.
Yeah. What do you feel like has prevented you from getting like maybe outside support rather than trying to figure it out alone? Boom. Right? Number 2, gather context. What's prevented you from getting the outside support? Right? Let's keep going.
I don't think I recognized it being something I needed outside support for.
Okay. And you said it's been intense for a year though, right?
Yeah.
And I know I'm challenging you pretty hard. It's in your best interest, I promise. 1 year of a problem showing itself. What do you feel like was the missing key for you to not see maybe I should get outside help? Gathering context.
I don't know, I'm pretty independent.
You hear this, right? You're more conscious of it. You hear it. You're seeing it. His identity is rooted, and he's a doctor, right? His identity is rooted in I'm independent. And so he thinks that him being an independent person is him having to go through these challenges on his own. We got to shift that.
Introverted, sort of person who sort of dealt with all these things myself, right? And so it didn't, I don't know. I wouldn't say I didn't recognize that I should maybe talk to somebody, but it took a while to build up to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it like the mindset of like you said, I've done this for all these years, I can just continue doing it?
Yeah, and ebbs and flows, right? So it's really bad for a week or two or whatever it is, and then it gets better, and then I'm like, okay, I'm okay now, and then something else will happen, and it'll get really bad again, and then so it's not constant, right? So I can like talk myself out of it. I think when I'm in a better spot.
Mm. Okay. And so these ebbs and flows, because there are times that it's not as intense, or has that led you to like settling for more of the same?
We're still gathering context.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't know what else I would say. Like, I haven't changed anything, so it must be settling in for more of the same.
Yeah. Do you see how that way of thinking of it'll get better eventually, let me just push through, or I've dealt with this, I've continued dealing with this, so let me keep dealing with it? Do you see how that mindset is what's kept us here?
I was a lot more direct with this dude because I didn't pattern interrupt. I just went straight into planting the idea of, do you see how this let me figure it out alone mindset, do you see how that's kept you stuck? Right?
Yeah.
In your mind, how so? I want to make sure we're on the same page. Like, how do you see that?
This is so important, the how so, right? Asking them to justify it because it becomes their idea. And you know that they're not just agreeing to agree, right?
Is that what's kept you here?
I mean, obviously, if I don't change anything, it's not going to change. And, I haven't been able to power through it. Like you said, I haven't, my own techniques haven't really gotten me very far.
Yeah. Yeah. And is it fair to say maybe we haven't been like as proactive as we can towards solving this, and we've just kind of like hoped it goes away at some point, and then it does?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yes.
That's the way of thinking that's going to keep you in this rut. Like so far, what has that mindset, what has it costed you so far?
Right? Boom. Now, what has it costed you? We're in step, what is that, 6?
I think the biggest thing is it's just my happiness. I'm just not happy, like doing what I'm not happy at work. I am sometimes happy at home, but not as much as I want to be or should be, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be able to get up early and work out or meditate or something. I can't do it anymore. I'm just exhausted all the time.
Yeah. Are you ready to actually be more proactive? Because like right now, right, this could just be one of the lows. It could just be one of the ebbs right now.
Yeah.
And then you talk yourself out of getting support again, and then we get back to this, right? It's
Yeah.
like we're ready to let go of that way of thinking right there.
Yeah, I am. I mean,
Right? So it looks like I didn't ask him what it's costed him and how long, right? Well, no, I did ask him that. But I went straight into if he's ready to overcome it. So sometimes it's a matter of reading the room because I was extremely, extremely direct with him. And yeah, let's keep going.
I don't want to be like this in 2 years or whenever. I want to get back to who I was. I don't want the anxiety. I just don't feel like myself.
Yeah. And what's different this time around because that's the comfortable thing to do, right? What's different this time around that we're not going to take the comfortable thing to do, and like
why now, right? Why now?
we're actually going to put that hand out?
I don't know. This low was pretty intense, like really intense. So I think that may be motivating me.
Yeah. Has it been worse than this?
Has it been what?
Worse than this?
No, this was bad. This was the worst.
Yeah.
And so now we're right into step 10, right? Permission for accountability.
And if that, because our brains are good at playing tricks on us, part of you knows that this isn't good for you, knows that it's not serving him to make decisions this way.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also been doing this for so long, right? And so we could call him Sandeep 1.0, your lower self. If he were to try to jump in there, try to take the driver's seat and lead the decisions you make, like would we as your coaches have your permission to keeping you accountable to overcoming that so that you can get out of this low?
I don't think I understand what you're asking.
You just gotta re-ask the motherfucker, right? Sometimes they won't get it. It's all good.
So I'm saying that like part of you is ready to let go of that way of thinking that we identify that's kept you stuck. But there's part of you that's been doing this for 20 years, so it's not just going to be like that we let go of it. And so my question to you is if that way of thinking were to show itself, would we as your coaches have your permission to keep you accountable to overcoming that?
Yeah. Yeah, you would.
I'm sure you know what's coming, right? My favorite line.
Good. Are you sure? I'm not always this nice.
No, yeah.
I'm not always this nice. I'm not always this nice.
I think you would. I think it'll actually be helpful for me. It's the same reason I go to the gym instead of work out a lot at home. It's like, the accountability is there.
Good, because if it shows itself in different ways, it may be like, think about it another night, or just give it a week and see if you still feel this way, or talk to your wife even though she's the one who wants you to do something. So if it shows itself, as long as we can keep you accountable, that's the most important part.
Subtly, what would we just do there, right? I said that it may show itself in like, oh, let me put this off for a week, time objection. Oh, let me talk to my lady, even though she's the reason that I need to do this, spouse objection. Very subtle, very simple things. But if he were to use that type of language at the end of the call, right, I have more leverage. I'm beating a dead horse here, but I fucking need to, right? We need to be able to put ourselves in the best possible position to handle the objection if it were to come. And just like that, we've been able to separate the belief, the identity, and the decision-making process that is not serving him into one that is, and have the leverage if the objection were to come up, right? Let's jump into the next one. Welcome back. So now we're going to talk about the fifth and final as the time I'm recording this, I'm sure I'll think of more. Knowledge, right? Knowledge. Shout out to Ty Lopez. We're going to go back up to the chart here. What is actually going on? Where are they versus where we want to get them to? So they're waiting until unsuccessful people wait until the perfect first answer or the perfect first step appears versus choosing direction and adjusting as they go, right? Using confusion as a stop sign as opposed to using momentum as clarity. And the identity that's formed is I am unsure, so I'm not going to do anything versus I learn by moving. So how does this sound in their language, right? This is ultimately confusion. It's disguised as powerlessness. They're telling themselves that they have no power. What does this sound like, guys? Oh, I didn't know where to start, right? Or I wasn't sure what the right first step was. I wanted to make sure that I had all my ducks in a row. They'll say shit like that. I wanted to make sure I have all my ducks in a row. What's actually happening here? It's similar to the procrastination one, except it's just packaged differently, so you're going to handle it differently. So what's actually happening is they're avoiding discomfort of choosing. There's also a little bit of fear of failure happening here, which we could talk about, right? They're avoiding discomfort of choosing. They're not lacking information. And saying, I don't know where to start, it creates this illusion that action is impossible until clarity arrives. But it's the other way around. Action is what creates clarity, right? Clarity doesn't come before action, it comes after or from action. So the flawed belief here is I can't see the perfect first step, so I'm just not going to take any step. Waiting for certainty guarantees inaction. That's why this kills decisions, because this is the same type of person who at the end of the call is going to tell you, well, I just want to do a little more research, or, can you send me some information, or, shit like that. And they're telling you how they think. The reality is there's no correct starting point, only a starting point. You understand? So this is the loop that we're breaking here. Overwhelm, which leads to delay, which leads to justification, which leads to the identity of I am cautious, I'm unsure. Remember what I keep saying, right? The problem here and the dangerous part is it's framed as a reasonable thing in their mind. Being cautious, it's fucking reasonable in their opinion. And so this is the reframe we're creating. Confusion is not a blocker, it's the starting point. It's normal. The first step does not need to be perfect, it just needs to exist, right? Momentum creates clarity, not the other way around. So how exactly are we going to do this? Number one, identify. What steps have you taken towards solving the logical problem so that you can overcome the emotional problem? I didn't know where to start, right? Or, along the lines of what we have up here. I wasn't sure what the right first step was. I wanted to make sure my ducks were in a row. Fuck your ducks. What's prevented you from getting outside support? Well, I didn't know it was out there. When I used to sell to doctors, right, I used to sell a very niche program to help doctors overcome burnout, help them get better at charting. And I used to hear this a lot. I didn't know what was out there. I didn't know where to look. Now, this could also turn into a money thing, right? Well, I don't know. I didn't know it was out there. I didn't know how much it costed, or maybe it was expensive. Or, from you asking what prevented them from getting outside support, it could turn into an ego thing. I thought I could figure it out by myself. You need to listen so you know what direction to take, right? Then we're going to pattern interrupt, can offer a perspective, yes. And then we're going to plant it using the overweight analogy in a little bit of a different way. So, not knowing where to start is an interesting topic, because it's ultimately like an overweight person saying the reason they're big is because they didn't know where to start. Whether it be keto diet or carnivore or weights or cardio, the reality is that they just need to be proactive. Is it fair to say that, and you need to word vomit this, right? Like, let them get word out, right? Yeah, right, that makes sense. Is it fair to say we haven't been as proactive as we could towards solving this? Yes. Okay, what makes that fair to say? Well, because I could have started somewhere. Similar as everything else, they see the contradiction, and there's a good chance that they may fight you on this. That's okay. Number 6, what has that way of thinking costed you so far? It's costed me this, that, and the third. How much longer do you want it to cost you that? Are you ready to overcome it? Yes. Okay. Why now? And then if they use loose language, it's going to be the exact same thing, right? We're going to talk about their outcomes. We're going to talk about their language and ultimately show them that the language that they're using does not support the outcomes that they want, right? And shit, my computer's about to die. Right? And then what we're looking for is certain language. Boom. Why now? Right? After X amount of time, after 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, why now to let go of that way of thinking? Well, because of this, that, and the third, because of X, Y, Z. Okay, and if that way of thinking were to show itself, would we as your coaches have your permission to keep you accountable and empower you to overcoming that? And then my favorite line, are you sure? I'm not always this nice. This is going to set you up to be able to objection handle them at the end if it were to come up, which it more than likely may, but now you have the leverage. Let's look at an example. Here we go with another one. So this is knowledge, right? I didn't know it was out there. I didn't know it existed, or things along those lines. Now, some feedback that I have for myself, right, after listening back on this call, is I don't think I challenged her as hard as I could have, right? There's a couple steps that I didn't follow, right? I didn't ask her. I mean, you'll see for yourself, but asking her what it's costed her, how much longer she wants her to cost her that, because I could feel that she was owning it. Now, it's not an excuse to skip the fucking process, right? So I think if I would have challenged her harder, this would have landed harder. Let's see how it goes. In that 5 years, besides therapy, what steps would you say you've taken towards getting more of that advanced support and coaching so that you can be able to knock these charts out quicker and actually have that life, have a life? Boom, right? What have you done? Step 1, what have you done towards solving the logical problem so that you can overcome the emotional problem? Let's see what she says.
I really haven't taken any other steps with that specifically.
Okay, what do you think's prevented? Boom, step 2, why? What do you think has prevented you? We're gathering context so we know what we're dealing with here. Prevented you?
I think knowing where to go and what would help.
Okay. So now we know that we're dealing with the limitation around knowledge, right? We're dealing with the helplessness, right? Or at least her disguising her lack of proactivity with helplessness. That's what we're dealing with here. And so now we know how to act accordingly. Confusion disguises powerlessness. Okay, so like I said, we're gonna have some light bulbs here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's always interesting, not knowing where to start, right? Because so boom, I dove straight in and I didn't ask Kanawa for a perspective. I didn't pattern interrupt her, right? Which I should have, but I could see that she's very, very receptive to it, so I just fucking went for the throat. If we just change this environment and let's talk about weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
A 300-pound person, they're not overweight because they don't know what workouts to do. Mm-hmm. Now are you planting the idea using an analogy, right? Because remember that this exists, it doesn't exist in the logical part of the brain, fear, it exists in the emotional part of the brain. How do we get to the emotional part of the brain? Identity anchor stories and analogies. Because they don't know what diet to follow.
Right? Because at the end of the day, it's out there. They just need to pick one and do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the real problem isn't not knowing where to start. It's not being proactive enough. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at your situation, is it fair to say that we haven't been as proactive as we can towards solving this?
Yeah, I think that's
Boom, right? So we planted the idea. Now it's time to ask her to justify it.
fair.
What makes that fair to say in your mind?
Because I spend more time being reactive than stopping and trying to get ahead, and because I feel like, well, once I get caught up, then I can find a way to try to not go back. But then you get caught up and you get a little break and you're like, okay, and then you fall back in the same pattern.
See what's happening, right? She sees the contradiction. She sees the contradiction. She didn't even push back on me. Or sometimes they will, though. Let's keep going.
Yeah, like once I lose weight, I'll go to the gym.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing.
It's
And
a
so,
little-
Like
Mhm.
I know I'm pushing you here, but it's in your best interest. I'm gonna say another tough one. Are you ready?
Mhm.
That is also what's gonna keep you stuck.
Mhm.
Pay attention to my body language, my energy, my tone. That is also what's going to keep you stuck, because it fucking is, right?
Right? Because the best workouts or the best charting systems and efficiency, they don't mean much if you're not proactive about it, if you're not grabbing the bull by the horns and doing something.
Yeah.
And so even if we take
When I'm talking to a guy, I'll say something like, if you're not grabbing life by the balls, I'm obviously not going to say that to a woman, right? Like, guys, read the fucking room. Read the room, right?
like, procrastination, I mean perfectionism out of it, right? This goes back to the procrastinating.
Mhm.
Like that piece. Are you ready to actually be proactive and like taking the necessary steps so that we don't continue having this kind of career and can eventually have a family?
So this is what I was talking about earlier, right? I didn't ask what it's costed her, and I didn't ask how much longer she wants it to cost her that. I went straight into if she's ready to overcome it, right? So in hindsight, I would have done that to create even more of a gap, even more pain, right? Let's keep going though.
Yes. Can I keep accountable to that?
I also didn't ask why now, right? So these are things that like learn from what I could have done here to be able to create even more urgency, even more of a gap, right? I was fine through the call. Now, in hindsight, I would have added those, right? I would not have skipped the process the same way I have with every other example that I've showed you. This shows it doesn't have to be perfect to be able to create the urgency that you need, but that shit helps, right? Because now I'm exposing myself to potentially having objections, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I'd hate to see you be in your own way, basically, right?
Mhm.
Continue to stay stuck, right?
Mhm.
And like,
I also didn't ask. Well, I did ask, can I keep you accountable, right? But I didn't ask why now. So there's parts of this that were missed, but like I keep saying, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? So in hindsight, first of all, this is how you handle someone who gives the knowledge thing. But after asking them, right, do you see how this is it fair to say you haven't been as proactive as you could? And then they say yes, and then they justify it. And what has that way of thinking costed you? That would have created even more urgency. How much longer do you want it to cost you? That would have created even more urgency. After her admitting that she's ready to overcome it, why now? Right? A lot of times I'll find myself relying on my ability to objection handle, and I'll create unnecessary fucking challenges for myself at the end that you really don't have to. So listening to this right now, learn from my mistakes, don't skip those parts. But we had enough urgency where at the end of the call, I don't even think she had objections, right? Because of how well the rest of the discovery was handled. So now you know, and I had enough leverage to be able to pull back at the end because I still was able. The main thing here to understand is you want to separate the belief and the identity that is not serving them, that's ultimately forming their decision making process from them, so that they can have a different decision making process, which is what we were able to do here. So I still would have had the leverage at the end of the call to be able to handle it if it came up.
If you made it this far, we are 2 to 3 hours, probably more than 3 hours in at this point, and you just watched this entire video, that says a lot about you. That says that, first of all, you have the attention span of someone who is going to win. But the fact that you watched a free video for this long also says that you are likely missing the guidance that you need. That as you were listening, there are likely objections that you were giving yourself, whether it be ego, procrastination, time, or money, or knowledge. So if you are ready to level up, if you are ready to be congruent, if you want to get to 30K a month like Chris, if you want to get to 10K a month like Alex as a setter, if you want to get to 17K a month like Zane, get out of your own way. Stop giving yourself these same objections. The link is in the description here. Click to apply. You're going to speak directly with me, and let's get you right. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.